At exactly 9 o'clock, on the morning of June 16, 2026, a silence fell over Windsor Castle that was more deafening than any cannon fire. For over 1,000 years, the security protocols of the British monarchy have functioned like a Swiss watch, predictable and absolute. But this morning, the gears stopped. A security code that had governed the inner sanctum of the sovereign was abruptly deactivated. The heavy, silver-plated key to the legendary Red Box, the vessel containing 100% of the nation's top-secret military intelligence and vital constitutional decrees, was no longer where it belonged. It did not sit on the mahogany desk of Queen Camilla. Instead, by a direct and irreversible order, it was hand-delivered to the Round Tower, into the ironclad custody of the Princess Royal Anne. This was not a simple clerical error. This was a constitutional earthquake. For the first time in history, a Queen Consort found herself standing outside the locked door of state secrets. The atmosphere inside the palace was described by witnesses as suffocating. This was a precision strike, a power freeze executed with the cold efficiency of a military operation. While the world outside went about its Tuesday morning, the internal locks of the monarchy were being changed. If you are as gripped by this sudden shift in power as the rest of the world, take a quick second to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. It helps us keep bringing you these breaking royal deep dives. And don't forget to drop a comment below. Do you think Princess Anne is the right choice for this role? The timing of this maneuver was no accident. Across the Atlantic, in the sunny enclave of Montecito, California, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex were reportedly preparing for their next major brand launch. They believed they still held the initiative in their long-standing Cold War with the palace. They believed the chaos in London would give them the leverage they needed to negotiate. But as the clock struck 9, their leverage evaporated. While they were playing for headlines, London was playing for the throne. The red box vacuum meant that every piece of information, every potential leak, and every royal decree was now being filtered through a single, uncompromising pair of eyes, Princess Anne's. A senior palace aide, who witnessed the moment of the handover, later recounted the exchange. He described how a high-ranking security official arrived at the Queen Consort's private quarters. The official did not bow as low as usual. He reportedly informed Camilla, with a chillingly polite tone, that the sovereign's emergency protocols had been updated to reflect a centralized command structure. He stated, quite simply, that the Red Box was no longer her responsibility. When asked on whose authority this was done, the official replied with just 2 words: the Crown. Camilla was left standing in a room that suddenly felt very cold. She realized in that instant that the shadow kingdom she had meticulously built over the last 2 years was being dismantled brick by brick. 100% of the state's vital documents were now behind a firewall she could not penetrate. But the most terrifying part of this story isn't the missing key, it is what was found inside the Red Box this morning. According to leaked reports from the audit team, the box was not filled with the usual diplomatic cables or boring budget reports. It contained a single, black leather folder. Inside that folder were exactly 5 pages. One witness, a member of the inventory team who caught a glimpse of the dossier, recounted that each page contained a name and a date. It wasn't a list of friends. It was a sequence of exits. Each page represented a powerful figure within the palace, who was scheduled for a permanent administrative removal. These 5 pages are the blueprint for the total erasure of the Queen Consort's influence. The 9 a.m. command was the first shot fired in a war that is now invisible to the public but devastating to those inside. It has triggered a domino effect that is already starting to topple the most secure positions in the royal household. This dossier of 5 names is the endgame. It is the plan for a monarchy that is being purified, returned to its core bloodline, and stripped of any non-constitutional appendages. As the sun rises higher over Windsor today, the question isn't just who is on those 5 pages. The question is, who is left to stop the Princess Royal? The locks have been changed, the Red Box is gone, and for 5 powerful individuals, the countdown to their disappearance has officially begun. Stay tuned as we reveal the first name on that list, a name that will shock the very foundation of the British establishment. Before we move on, make sure you've subscribed so you don't miss our next update. This story is moving faster than anyone expected, and you'll want to be here when we reveal the first person to be crossed off that secret list. The images were glossy, the crowds were enthusiastic, and the headlines were global. From the vibrant streets of Nigeria to the high-security summits in Colombia, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex moved with the practiced air of a reigning couple. Between May 2024 and the early months of 2025, they were executing what insiders called a faux royal offensive. It was a calculated display of soft power designed to show the world and the palace that they were the only ones capable of generating modern royal star power. They operated on a single, arrogant assumption that a depleted monarchy, stretched thin by illness and absence, would eventually be forced into an administrative surrender. This was the Sussex calculation error. Harry and Meghan believed they had identified a fatal opening in the royal defense. With King Charles focused on his medical treatments and Prince William dedicating 100% of his mental and emotional energy to the recovery of Princess Catherine, the Sussexes felt the institution was hollowed out. They perceived a power vacuum. They assumed that as the spare members of the family tree became increasingly essential for the brand's global survival, the palace would eventually pick up the phone and negotiate. But they had underestimated the sheer, cold resilience of a 1,000-year-old institution. While the couple in California was focused on their commercial rebranding and pseudo-state visits, the numbers were turning against them with a brutal finality. By the beginning of 2026, a comprehensive survey revealed a devastating reality. Their trust rating in the United Kingdom had cratered to a mere 15%. They weren't becoming more essential, they were becoming a footnote. This was the data pincer closing in. The commercial side of their gamble was even more precarious. Independent media experts noted a staggering 40% drop in viewership and engagement for their latest content projects. The novelty had worn off. The Sussex brand was no longer a premium asset, it was a declining stock. This loss of audience forced the couple into a dangerous cycle, the panic response. To keep the numbers alive, they had to increase the frequency of their media maneuvers, pushing harder against the palace gates. A former consultant for the Sussex team recently shared a chilling account of the mood behind the scenes during this period. He recounted a private conversation where the couple reportedly expressed total confidence that the firm was on the verge of a staffing crisis. One source claims the Duke remarked that the palace simply didn't have enough players on the board to keep him out forever. They were waiting for a white flag. They didn't get a flag, they got a firewall. The constant media pressure from California had an unintended consequence. It forced King Charles into a corner. Instead of seeking a compromise to find peace, the king, supported by the clinical advice of Princess Anne, realized that the Sussex equation was a permanent threat to the crown's stability. The decision was made to treat the California branch not as a family matter, but as a reputational risk that required a total administrative shutdown. The Red Box transfer at 9 a.m. was the final answer to the Sussexes' 40% miscalculation. While Harry and Meghan were checking their engagement metrics in Montecito, London was deleting their access codes. The institution didn't negotiate with the vacuum. It simply filled it with the iron will of the Princess Royal. Now, as the 5-page dossier sits on Anne's desk, the reality is setting in. The Sussexes thought they were too big to fail. But the first page of that secret file deals with the one thing they never thought they would lose. The final legal link to the line of succession. The calculation error is about to become a permanent exile, and the name at the top of the list is someone Harry never expected to see betrayed. The halls of Westminster in late 2022 were filled with the usual political chatter, but beneath the surface, a quiet, surgical operation was being performed on the very foundation of the British monarchy. This was not a public debate or a headline-grabbing scandal. It was the construction of the Regency Act blockade. In the final months of her life, Queen Elizabeth II, working in perfect concert with her heir, Charles, orchestrated a legal masterstroke that would permanently change the rules of the game. They didn't strip titles. They didn't issue banishments. Instead, they moved the goalposts of the law so far that certain members of the family found themselves playing on a field that no longer existed. The goal was simple: to create a constitutional filter that would ensure the crown remained functional and secure, regardless of who was living in California or who was mired in controversy. By pushing Parliament to amend the Regency Acts, they added two permanent, lifelong names to the list of councillors of state: Princess Anne and Prince Edward. This move was a wide-scale blockade, disguised as a mere administrative update. For Harry, the realization was a moment of profound public embarrassment. On paper, he remained a councillor of state, a role reserved for the spouse of the sovereign and the next 4 people in the line of succession who are over the age of 21. But the amendment changed the reality of power. By increasing the pool of available substitutes to 5 active working royals, the palace effectively reduced the probability of Harry or Prince Andrew ever being called upon to act for the king to exactly 0%. In every emergency scenario, whether the king is travelling, ill, or temporarily incapacitated, the law now dictates a sequence of priority that bypasses non-working royals. The administrative system has been restructured to self-correct. It ensures that the person holding the pen for the monarch is someone who lives within the borders of the United Kingdom and adheres to the protocols of the institution. A senior constitutional lawyer who advised the palace during this transition later recounted a private briefing where the strategy was laid out. He described the atmosphere as clinical. He recalled an exchange where a palace official asked if the move would be seen as an aggressive act toward the Duke of Sussex. The response was ice cold. "It isn't an attack, it's a fortification. We are simply ensuring the lights stay on, no matter who decides to walk out the door." In California, the impact of this legislative silent kill was felt immediately. Harry was left holding a title that had been hollowed out from the inside. He was a councillor who would never counsel. He was a state official who would never be granted the keys to the state. The legal blockade had turned his royal status into a constitutional ghost. He could host as many faux royal tours as he wanted, but in the eyes of the British government, his ability to intervene in the machinery of the crown had been neutralised by a 0% probability clause. The Regency Act blockade was the ultimate firewall. It proved that the monarchy doesn't need to shout to win a fight. It just needs to change the law. But as the 5-page dossier on Princess Anne's desk reveals, the 2022 amendment was only the foundation. The legal blockade was designed to stop Harry from coming back in. Now, the new codes being activated at 9 o'clock this morning are designed to push the rest of the Shadow Kingdom out. The first page of that secret dossier contains a name that hasn't been mentioned in the press for months, but their removal will be the clearest sign yet that the 0% rule is being applied to everyone in the Queen Consort's inner circle. The blockade is moving from the law books to the palace living rooms, and the next person to hit the wall is someone who thought they were untouchable. 450. That is the number that acts as a silent, immovable wall against the chaos of modern celebrity and the drama of the Shadow Kingdom. While the world's attention is often captured by high-gloss production and carefully staged media tours from California, the true engine of the British monarchy has been running on a completely different fuel. Princess Anne represents the clinical antidote to the performance era. She is the embodiment of a classical royal philosophy. Silence is power, and results are the only resume that matters. For 3 decades, the Princess Royal has averaged 450 official engagements every year. It is a grueling, relentless pace that she maintains without a single demand for personal glory or a starring role in a documentary. This staggering output is her message to those who think the monarchy can be managed like a lifestyle brand. She doesn't seek the spotlight. She simply outworks everyone else until the spotlight has no choice but to find her. This lack of personal ego is precisely why the entire national political establishment has thrown its weight behind her. Anne possesses 0% ambition for the crown itself. The old laws of succession, which once pushed her down the line behind her younger brothers, have ironically turned her into the most trusted guardian of the institution. Because she was never destined to wear the crown, her loyalty to it is seen as pure, unpolluted by the desire for personal power or the need to compete with her brother, the king. A senior member of the cabinet recently shared a private observation that highlights the sheer weight of her presence. He recounted a high-level briefing where several advisors were arguing over the public relations impact of a new policy. Princess Anne reportedly cut through the noise with a single, sharp sentence. She told the room that the monarchy does not exist to be liked, it exists to be reliable. She stated that if they spent half as much time on their duties as they did on their image, there wouldn't be a crisis to discuss. The public response to her new role as the gatekeeper of the Red Box has been nothing short of a mandate. In a wide-scale national poll conducted in April 2026, public support for Anne's promotion to a centralized administrative role reached a record-breaking 82%. This isn't just popularity. It is a declaration of trust. The people don't want a performance. They want the 82% certainty that the person holding the keys to the state secrets is someone who cannot be manipulated by Hollywood trends or personal vendettas. Anne stands as the final barrier between the traditional integrity of the crown and the shadow kingdom that has tried to take root in the palace corridors. She is the person who looks at the 5-page dossier with zero emotion and 100% focus on the stability of the throne. To her, those 5 names are not people with feelings. They are variables in a security equation that must be solved. The firewall is now complete. The 0% probability of outside intervention is no longer a legal theory. It is a physical reality managed by the most hard-working woman in the country. But as the clock ticks past 9 a.m. on June 16th, the first move of the sovereign endgame is about to be revealed. Anne has finished her review of the first page. The administrative order has been signed. The individual at the top of that list is about to find out that 82% of the public and one very determined princess are ready to see them go. The question is, can the Queen Consort save her most loyal ally, or has Anne already closed the box? June 2026. The golden nib of a fountain pen touched a heavy parchment, and with a single, decisive stroke, King Charles III sent a message that vibrated through every floor of Buckingham Palace. He wasn't just bestowing a medal, he was completing a structural fortification. Vice Admiral Sir Timothy Lawrence, the man who has spent over 3 decades as the quiet shadow of the Princess Royal, was elevated to the highest possible rank, Knight Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order. This was the final piece of the concentric firewall. In the complex language of royal titles, the Knight Grand Cross is unique. It is a personal gift from the sovereign, granted for services directly to the monarchy, bypassing the usual political recommendations. By choosing this specific moment in June 2026 to elevate Timothy Lawrence, the king was not just honoring a brother-in-law, he was defining the exact blueprint of the ideal royal associate. The contrast was staggering. On one side, you have Timothy Lawrence, a man who has stood exactly 3 paces behind his wife for over 20 years without a single interview, a single memoir, or a single leaked complaint. His silence has been his greatest weapon. On the other side, the palace looks toward California, where 4 years of continuous narrative, otherwise known as the Shadow Kingdom, has produced a mountain of oisance and grievances. A veteran member of the Lord Chamberlain's office recently recounted a private moment during the preparation for this decree. He described the king looking over the Vice Admiral's long record of service. Charles reportedly turned to a senior advisor and remarked that in an age where everyone feels entitled to speak their truth, Timothy has mastered the art of the silent creed. The king reportedly stated that the crown is no longer interested in those who seek to be heard. It is only interested in those who are prepared to be pillars. This is the essence of the concentric firewall. It is a protective layer of unshakable silent loyalty wrapped around the future of the monarchy, specifically around Prince William. By elevating Timothy Lawrence to the highest rank of the Victorian order, the king has placed a man of ironclad discipline at the very centre of the internal command. This move effectively signalled to the Shadow Kingdom that the path to royal favour is paved with 2 decades of silence, not 4 years of headlines. The numbers tell the story of this slow burn ascension. From his initial appointment as a Knight Commander in 2011 to this supreme elevation in 2026, Timothy's rise has been measured, earned, and entirely devoid of drama. He is the guardian of the guardian. While Princess Anne manages the red box and the administrative purge, her husband now stands as the supreme knight of the household, a man with the highest security clearance and the absolute unbought trust of the king. Insiders suggest that this move has left the Queen Consort's faction in a state of quiet panic. They recognize that the firewall being built by the king, Anne, and William is designed to be impenetrable to those who value their brand over their duty. The elevation of Timothy Lawrence proves that the institution is returning to its roots, a world where the most powerful people are the ones the public hears the least. As the new insignia was prepared for the Vice Admiral, the 5-page dossier on Anne's desk turned to page 3. The concentric firewall is now live. The locks have been changed, the legal blockades are in place, and the Silent Knight has been promoted to the inner circle. But as the core of the monarchy becomes a fortress of integrity, the final names on the secret list are beginning to realize that their time inside the walls is down to its last few hours. The most dangerous confrontation is no longer coming from across the ocean. It is happening right now, behind the closed doors of the king's private study. The final scene of this historic realignment took place not in a public courtroom, but in the hushed, candlelit atmosphere of a private study at Sandringham. On the desk lay the object that had haunted the palace corridors for weeks, the 5-page dossier. Each page contained a single name. Each name belonged to a high-ranking member of the old faction individuals who had occupied the inner circle of the Queen Consort, weaving a network of influence that had begun to overshadow the direct line of succession. Princess Anne stood over the documents, her face a mask of unyielding duty. When a senior courtier tentatively asked if there was any room for mercy or a phased transition for these loyalists, Anne delivered the final 5-word verdict that has now defined the future of the British monarchy. She brought too many people. Those 5 words were not spoken with malice. They were spoken with the cold, clinical precision of an institutional autopsy. In Anne's view, the Crown is not a private social club. It is a sacred trust. By allowing an unofficial shadow kingdom of advisors and relatives to take root, the Queen Consort had diluted the singular authority of the throne. The verdict was absolute. The hangers-on were no longer a luxury the monarchy could afford. The purification had begun. At 77 years old, King Charles III sat in the shadows of the room, his face etched with the weariness of his ongoing medical treatments. He listened to his sister's verdict, and he saw the 5 names that were about to be erased from the royal ledger. In that moment, the world saw the true burden of the sovereign. He understood exactly what was happening. He knew that his wife's support system was being dismantled piece by piece, but the king chose silence. He did not intervene. He did not offer a compromise. He did not attempt to protect the personal interests of his spouse. At 77, Charles has reached a point of clarity that transcends personal sentiment. He realized that the institutional machinery, managed by Anne and William, was moving to protect the crown's survival. His silent consent was the final signature on the dossier. The system had evolved to a state where the integrity of the throne outweighed the personal desires of the man wearing the crown. This was the sovereign endgame. The battle was over. The 5 names on those pages have been removed, their access codes deactivated, and their influence neutralized. They have stepped out of the palace and into the obscurity of private life. Only the 6th name remains Camilla herself, but she now occupies a state of profound institutional isolation. The Shadow Kingdom has been burned away, leaving only the direct bloodline standing within the firewall. This entire operation was a test of the monarchy's soul. It was a struggle to prove whether this thousand-year-old institution exists based on actual integrity or if it has simply become a performance for the cameras. By choosing the iron refusal and the red box vacuum, the House of Windsor has declared its answer. The rules apply to everyone. The crown belongs to the people, and those who stand beside the throne must be as transparent as the glass that protects the crown jewels. The 5-word verdict has changed everything. The palace is quieter now, stripped of the too many people who sought to claim a piece of its power. The era of the performance is over. The era of the sovereign is back. If you want to stay ahead of the next major shift in the royal hierarchy, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the Royal Insider Network. We are committed to bringing you the truth from behind the velvet curtains. What is your take on Anne's final verdict? Was it a necessary act of protection or a cold institutional strike? Let us know in the comments below. Your voice is part of this history. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the heart of the monarchy. Stay tuned for our next exclusive report.
Let's talk about Prince Harry, who's going to be here in a month. He is here for a great cause, so I will celebrate that. We love the Invictus Games.
Well, no surprise here. According to Newsweek and other sources, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, the Duke and Duchess of Scamalot, their favorability has plummeted in the United States. Let me read you these statistics. They have plummeted from 37% to 29% in the eyes of Americans, right? Now, visitors on Meghan Markle's site, her web traffic has allegedly dropped from 108,000 in December.
Breaking news this morning, Wednesday, June 17th. 2026. We are receiving urgent reports that indicate a massive shift within the British royal family. After 4 years of self-imposed exile in the sun-drenched hills of Montecito, Prince Harry is officially on his way back to the United Kingdom. This is not the triumphant return many might have imagined. According to high-level sources confirmed by the New York Post just hours ago, the Duke of Sussex is preparing for a permanent or semi-permanent relocation to London this coming July. The fairy tale of an independent financial empire in California has reached a definitive and quiet end. Before we dive into the shocking details of this royal retreat, please take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. It helps us keep you updated with these breaking stories. Also, tell us in the comments, do you think the UK should welcome him back? We want to hear your thoughts. It is now 8:30 in the morning on the East Coast, and the royal headlines are dominated by one word: retreat. Since January 2020, the world watched as Harry and Meghan attempted to build a billion-dollar brand across the Atlantic. But as we reach the midpoint of 2026, the reality is stark. The multi-million-dollar deals that once fueled their lifestyle have largely evaporated. What was once described as a bid for freedom has transformed into what insiders are calling a desperate search for stability. One close associate of the Duke reportedly recounted a conversation from late May where Harry expressed a profound sense of isolation. The Duke allegedly said that the California dream had turned into a gilded cage, and he felt the walls closing in as his connections to his former life continued to wither. This narrative of regret is a far cry from the defiant interviews of 2021. The timing of this return in July 2026 is critical. It marks over 6 years since the initial departure, and yet the landscape Harry is returning to is unrecognizable. He is no longer the favored son or the popular prince. He is returning to a country where his security detail has been stripped and his official roles have been redistributed. Let us look at the dialogue reported from within the palace walls. A senior royal aide recently shared that the king's stance has remained firm yet sorrowful. The king was quoted as saying that while the door to the family is never fully locked, the door to official royal duties remains bolted. This means Harry is coming back not as a working royal, but as a private citizen with a famous name and very few remaining privileges. The financial collapse of their American ventures cannot be understated. Between the cancellation of major podcasting contracts and the cooling interest from streaming giants, the Sussexes found themselves in a position where the cost of their high-security lifestyle in America was no longer sustainable. It is reported that during a heated meeting with financial advisors in April 2026, Harry was warned that his current trajectory was leading toward a total depletion of his inheritance. The realization was immediate. The only way to survive was to head home. But home is no longer a sanctuary. The legal battles over his police protection in the United Kingdom have left him vulnerable. When he touches down in London this July, he will not have the blue lights and the specialized protection officers that once flanked his motorcade. He will be just another high-profile individual navigating a city that has largely moved on without him. Imagine the scene at Heathrow Airport just a few weeks from now. The Duke, who once represented the modernization of the monarchy, returning under the cover of night, perhaps seeking a residence that is no longer his to claim. Every step he takes will be scrutinized by a public that feels betrayed by his previous critiques of the institution. If you are finding this update insightful, please leave a comment below with the word Royal Update, so we know you are following along. Your engagement helps us bring these stories to light faster. The tragedy of this situation lies in the loss of honor. The honorary military titles he once held dear are gone. The patronages that gave him a sense of purpose have been handed to others. One former friend of the prince narrated a moment from a private phone call where Harry lamented that he had lost the very things that defined his identity. He reportedly told this friend that he felt like a man without a country, caught between a life in America that failed him and a life in England that no longer knows where to put him. As we look toward the events unfolding in July, the question remains: is this a genuine reconciliation or a strategic surrender? The world is watching, and the clock is ticking toward his arrival. The breaking reports suggest that the official announcement of his new residence in the UK could come as early as next week. This is a story of a prince who flew too close to the sun and is now trying to find a place to land. Stay tuned as we continue to track this developing story throughout the morning. As the sun rises over London on this 17th of June, 2026, a new and bitter controversy is boiling over regarding the Duke's legacy. While his physical return to the United Kingdom is the headline of the hour, the foundation of his global identity is being systematically dismantled by public opinion. For years, Prince Harry's crowning achievement was the Invictus Games, an event he founded back in 2014 to support wounded veterans. It was the one area where he held undisputed respect. However, that respect has hit an all-time low, following his controversial inclusion in the Time 100 Most Influential People in the World of Sports. The recognition was intended to be a milestone, a validation of his work over the last decade. But instead of applause, the announcement triggered a wave of skepticism that has now turned into a full-scale reputation crisis. To the public, this feels less like an earned honor and more like a carefully manufactured public relations stunt. The disconnect between Harry's self-image and the world's perception has never been more visible than it is right now. The digital landscape is currently flooded with backlash, and one specific narrative has taken hold. A single comment on a major news platform, which garnered nearly 1,000 interactions in record time, seemed to speak for the masses. The user wrote with sharp cynicism, asking if the Duke had simply purchased his way onto the list. The comment reflected a growing sentiment that these accolades are no longer based on merit, but on the power of a Hollywood PR machine. When you look at the names usually found on such a prestigious list, you see athletes who have bled on the field, coaches who have spent decades in the trenches, and innovators who have revolutionized how we play the game. Harry, by contrast, is seen as a figurehead, a man who stands on a stage and delivers a speech, but has never experienced the grueling reality of professional sport or the tactical demands of coaching. One sports analyst, reflecting on the public's anger, recently narrated the frustration felt by many in the industry. The analyst noted that while the Invictus Games are a noble cause, the stripping of Harry's reputation is happening because he is being marketed as a sports icon rather than a patron. The analyst was quoted as saying that the public is tired of being told who to admire, especially when the person in question seems to be using the sacrifices of others to bolster his own personal brand in California. This perception of stolen valor or unearned credit is what makes this moment so damaging for Harry as he attempts to rebuild his life. In the eyes of many, he is no longer the humble veteran championing his comrades. He has become a celebrity chasing a ranking. The dark side of the Time 100 recognition is that it has highlighted exactly what the public finds most frustrating about his post-royal life: the pursuit of status without the traditional work to back it up. The weight of nearly 1,000 people agreeing that his influence might be bought is a heavy burden to carry back to a country that already feels alienated from him. It raises the question of what happens to a man's identity when the one thing he was truly proud of is called into question by the very people he hopes to lead. As we move closer to his arrival in July, the atmosphere is thickening with a sense of what next? If his sports legacy is being rejected, what exactly is left for him to claim upon his return? The world is waiting to see if he can answer that question, or if the silence from the palace will be the only response he receives. As we dig deeper into the reasons behind the Duke's sudden retreat to the United Kingdom, a massive financial scandal is erupting across North America, threatening to dismantle the very foundation of his charitable legacy. The Invictus Games, once the shining jewel in Harry's crown, is now being described by critics as a runaway financial train heading for a catastrophic wreck. While the public image of the Games is one of healing and camaraderie, the reality behind the scenes is far more litigious and expensive. Reports are surfacing this morning regarding a devastating lawsuit filed in Canada that has sent shockwaves through the veteran community. Scott Snow, a Navy veteran who participated in the 2023 Games, has filed a claim for $2,400,000 in damages. The details of his story are heartbreaking and have led many to question if the organization has stripped its responsibility to protect the very people it claims to serve. During the 2023 competition, Snow suffered a severe cervical spinal injury. However, court documents reveal a shocking oversight. The organizers allegedly failed to provide adequate insurance coverage for the participants. Now, instead of receiving the support of a global organization, this veteran is reportedly forced to pay $5,000 per month out of his own pocket for essential medical care. One of Snow's associates recounted a private conversation where the veteran expressed a deep sense of betrayal, stating that he felt like a prop in a media circus, discarded the moment he was no longer useful for a photo opportunity. This personal tragedy is set against a backdrop of eye-watering financial waste. The budget for the upcoming Games in Vancouver and Whistler has ballooned to a staggering $63.2 million. When you break that down, the cost comes out to approximately $118,000 for each of the 543 athletes. To put that into perspective, the American Warrior Games, a similar and highly successful event, operates on a budget of just $2 million. Even in Germany, a similar tournament was held for a mere $200,000, despite hosting 50% of the number of athletes. The question being asked by taxpayers in Canada is simple. Where is the money going? Public anger is reaching a boiling point because $30 million of that budget comes directly from Canadian taxpayer funds. Even more suspicious is the fact that in official budget documents, the licensing fees being paid back to the parent organization in the United Kingdom have been completely redacted. This lack of transparency has led to a narrative of hidden profits disguised as charity. A former senior staffer from the Games recently narrated the internal tension, claiming that the focus had shifted away from the veterans and toward brand Sussex. This insider alleged that the overhead costs for luxury travel and high-end production were prioritized over the long-term health insurance of the competitors. As a result, a massive petition is now circulating online, gaining thousands of signatures every hour. The demand is clear. The public wants Harry stripped of his role as the face of the Invictus Games. They are calling for the organization to be handed back to a non-partisan military board that prioritizes fiscal responsibility over celebrity optics. As the sun climbs higher this Wednesday morning, the Duke is facing a two-front war. In London, he faces a family that has moved on, and in Canada, He faces a legal and financial nightmare that could bankrupt his reputation forever. The question everyone is asking as he prepares to land in July is this: if he can no longer claim the Invictus Games as his success story, what does he have left to offer the world? The shadows over his return are growing longer by the minute, and the answers may be more damaging than anyone expected. While the financial and professional structures of the Duke's life are crumbling, perhaps the most painful stripping of all is happening within the walls of the palaces he once called home. As we move closer to his expected arrival this July, the reality of his total isolation from the British royal family has become undeniable. This is no longer a mere family spat. It is a complete institutional and personal erasure. In just the last 7 days, 7 distinct pieces of factual data have emerged that paint a devastating picture of Harry's current standing. From court rulings to social snubs, the evidence is clear. The bridge back to the heart of the monarchy has been dismantled. The most glaring example occurred recently at the wedding of Peter Phillips. While every senior member of the royal family gathered to celebrate Princess Anne's son, the Duke of Sussex was nowhere to be found. He wasn't just absent. Sources indicate he wasn't even on the guest list. He has been effectively stripped of his status as a family member in the eyes of his own kin. The rift between the two brothers, William and Harry, has now reached a chilling milestone. It has been nearly 3 years since they were last seen standing side by side during the somber days of the Queen's funeral in September 2022. Since that moment, the silence has been absolute. We are receiving reports from high-level palace insiders that the level of separation is so severe that Harry does not even possess Prince William's current personal phone number. One courtier recounted a particularly telling moment from earlier this year, narrating how a message intended for the Prince of Wales had to be routed through a phalanx of lawyers and private secretaries. The courtier noted that William has closed the book on his brother, allegedly saying to a close friend that he no longer recognizes the man Harry has become. This lack of direct communication means that when Harry lands in London next month, he will be entering a city where his own brother is a stranger. The true turning point in this narrative of isolation occurred in March 2024, when the Princess of Wales, Kate, bravely shared her cancer diagnosis with the world. The global landscape shifted beneath Harry's feet. At that moment, any lingering public patience for Harry's media attacks on the family evaporated. The surge of global support for William and Kate was so overwhelming that it stripped Harry of his most powerful weapon, the media narrative. A communications expert recently analyzed this shift, narrating how Harry's attempts to frame himself as a victim were rendered obsolete by the very real and dignified battle being fought by the princess. The expert noted that any critique Harry directed toward the palace was suddenly viewed by the public as an attack on a family in a state of profound vulnerability. The media leverage he once used to try and force a meeting with his father or brother is now gone. He is no longer seen as a reformer. He is seen by many as a distraction they no longer have time for. As we look at the calendar today, Wednesday, June 17, 2026, the Duke is a man standing on the outside looking in. The royal machine has moved on, and the roles he once filled have been seamlessly redistributed among those who stayed. The isolation is absolute. The question that remains, as he prepares to board that flight in July, is whether he truly understands the level of silence that awaits him. Will he find a way to break through the stone walls, or is he returning to a kingdom where he is now nothing more than a ghost of the past? The next few weeks will reveal if any spark of reconciliation remains, or if the fire has been permanently extinguished. As we reach mid-morning on this Wednesday, June 17, 2026, a new layer of the Sussex drama is being peeled back, revealing what many experts are calling a desperate and outdated media strategy. The world has changed significantly over the last few years, but it seems the tactics coming out of California are still stuck in a cycle of calculated image-making that is no longer working. As the Duke of Sussex prepares for his flight back to London this July, The attempt to control the public narrative has taken a turn that many are calling an absolute PR disaster. The situation began just days ago when the Duke gave a rare, high-profile interview to Time magazine. This was meant to be a serious, solo moment for him to discuss his future and his identity outside of the royal fold. What was most striking to observers wasn't what he said, but the conspicuous silence regarding his personal life. For the first time in years, he did not mention his wife, MEGHAN, a single time. To many, this looked like a clear attempt to strip away the celebrity brand and present himself as a serious figure once again, perhaps as a way to soften the ground for his return to the United Kingdom. However, the spotlight did not stay on Harry for long. In a move that looked like a direct response to being left out of the Time narrative, a romantic, high-definition photograph of the couple appeared on social media. It was designed to look like a candid, intimate moment captured in the gardens of California, radiating the same fairy tale energy they have cultivated since they first left the palace. The timing was impeccable, or so it seemed. The internet in 2026 is far more sophisticated and skeptical than it was a decade ago. Within minutes of the photo being posted, digital forensic experts and social media users began to dismantle the image. They quickly discovered a startling truth. The photograph wasn't a current glimpse into their life. It was a recycled image from approximately 2017, taken nearly 9 years ago, before the couple was even married. One digital analyst narrated the discovery process, pointing out specific details in the background and the Duke's styling that matched old press kits from their early dating days. The analyst noted that by using a nearly decade-old photo to represent their current domestic bliss, the couple had effectively stripped themselves of their own credibility. The analyst was quoted as saying that this felt like a silent scream for relevance, a frantic attempt to remind the world of a magic that has long since faded. This incident occurred exactly 18 days after a highly controversial and cold reception following a speech in Geneva. The public is now seeing a pattern of distraction politics, where a PR crisis is immediately met with a romanticized image to shift the focus. But this time, the public isn't buying it. The backlash has been swift, with people calling the move staged and outdated. It has highlighted a growing sense that the California dream is being held together by old photographs and manufactured moments. As the clock ticks toward his July arrival in London, this media blunder has left the Duke in an even more vulnerable position. He is returning to a country that values authenticity, yet he is being trailed by a media machine that is caught in a web of its own making. The question remains: if the romantic images are old and the solo interviews are strategic, what version of the man will actually step off that plane? The world is watching the countdown to July with a mixture of curiosity and exhaustion, wondering if there are any more masks left to slip. As we reach mid-morning on this Wednesday, June 17, 2026, a new layer of the Sussex drama is being peeled back, revealing what many experts are calling a desperate and outdated media strategy. The world has changed significantly over the last few years, but it seems the tactics coming out of California are still stuck in a cycle of calculated image-making that is no longer working. As the Duke of Sussex prepares for his flight back to London this July, the attempt to control the public narrative has taken a turn that many are calling an absolute PR disaster. The situation began just days ago when the Duke gave a rare, high-profile interview to Time magazine. This was meant to be a serious, solo moment for him to discuss his future and his identity outside of the royal fold. What was most striking to observers wasn't what he said, but the conspicuous silence regarding his personal life. For the first time in years, he did not mention his wife, MEGHAN, a single time. To many, this looked like a clear attempt to strip away the celebrity brand and present himself as a serious figure once again, perhaps as a way to soften the ground for his return to the United Kingdom. However, the spotlight did not stay on Harry for long. In a move that looked like a direct response to being left out of the Time narrative, a romantic, high-definition photograph of the couple appeared on social media. It was designed to look like a candid, intimate moment captured in the gardens of California, radiating the same fairy tale energy they have cultivated since they first left the palace. The timing was impeccable, or so it seemed. The internet in 2026 is far more sophisticated and skeptical than it was a decade ago. Within minutes of the photo being posted, digital forensic experts and social media users began to dismantle the image. They quickly discovered a startling truth. The photograph wasn't a current glimpse into their life. It was a recycled image from approximately 2017 taken nearly 9 years ago, before the couple was even married. One digital analyst narrated the discovery process, pointing out specific details in the background and the Duke's styling that matched old press kits from their early dating days. The analyst noted that by using a nearly decade-old photo to represent their current domestic bliss, the couple had effectively stripped themselves of their own credibility. The analyst was quoted as saying that this felt like a silent scream for relevance, a frantic attempt to remind the world of a magic that has long since faded. This incident occurred exactly 18 days after a highly controversial and cold reception following a speech in Geneva. The public is now seeing a pattern of distraction politics, where a PR crisis is immediately met with a romanticized image to shift the focus. But this time, the public isn't buying it. The backlash has been swift, with people calling the move staged and outdated. It has highlighted a growing sense that the California dream is being held together by old photographs and manufactured moments. As the clock ticks toward his July arrival in London, this media blunder has left the Duke in an even more vulnerable position. He is returning to a country that values authenticity. Yet he is being trailed by a media machine that is caught in a web of its own making. The question remains, if the romantic images are old and the solo interviews are strategic, what version of the man will actually step off that plane? The world is watching the countdown to July with a mixture of curiosity and exhaustion, wondering if there are any more masks left to slip.
Well, good evening from London. Welcome to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Only day 2 of my return. I'm already utterly exhausted by Harry.
You spent the last 3 years trashing the royal family, all of them, naming them in your book and trashing them, embarrassing them. You've trashed the monarchy as an institution. You've called it being run effectively by a bunch of callous races.
It is 8 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast, Thursday, June 18th, 2026, and we are tracking a seismic shift in the British media landscape. Breaking news has just crossed our desks regarding Prince Harry's latest and perhaps most volatile appearance on national television. Only hours ago, the Duke of Sussex sat down for a high-stakes interview with ITV, but this was not a conversation about charity or his future in California. Instead, the world watched as Harry launched what can only be described as a personal scorched earth campaign. Before we break down the shocking details of this broadcast, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We are tracking this story as it develops throughout the day. Also, we want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think Harry's crusade against the media is justified, or is it a distraction? Let us know your thoughts below. The summer of 2026 was supposed to be a time of quiet transition for the Duke, but the interview that aired last night has reignited a firestorm. Harry has transformed the airwaves into a personal courtroom, and his target is singular, Piers Morgan. The Duke has officially made it his life's mission to see his wife's most vocal critic behind bars. To do this, Harry is resurrecting a phone hacking scandal that dates back more than 20 years, an era most of the public had long since moved past. During the broadcast, Harry's rhetoric reached a level of intensity we haven't seen in years. One source close to the production narrated Harry's mindset during the filming, stating that the Duke appeared obsessed with a sense of retribution. The Duke reportedly told the interviewer that his struggle is no longer just about privacy, but about a cleansing of the British press. He allegedly remarked that he views himself as the only person with the courage to finish a war that started decades ago, even though the newspapers involved were shuttered years ago and the primary offenders have already served their legal sentences. This personal crusade has caused an immediate and devastating fracture within the royal family's inner circle. We can confirm this morning that Prince William has officially severed all ties with Tom Bradby, the head of ITV News. This is a monumental shift, as Bradby was once a trusted confidant to both brothers. However, the Prince of Wales has reportedly reached a breaking point. A senior palace aide narrated the moment William made the decision, describing the prince as deeply disillusioned. William allegedly told his advisors that he can no longer maintain a friendship with someone who allows a national news platform to be hijacked for personal vendettas. The Prince of Wales reportedly characterized the interview as a propaganda exercise, one that serves only to settle old scores rather than provide any actual value to the public. For William, the line has been crossed. He refuses to see the monarchy or its associates used as tools in Harry's private war against the tabloids. But what is the true strategy behind this sudden outburst in June 2026? Many media analysts are calling this a straw man argument. As the Duke's personal brand continues to face challenges in America and his financial ventures lose momentum, he has pivoted back to his most reliable villain, the British press. By casting himself as the lone hero fighting a corrupt system from 20 years ago, he is attempting to distract from the current reality of his declining influence. One industry expert recently narrated this strategic shift, suggesting that Harry is trying to manufacture a hero's journey to regain public sympathy. The expert noted that while Harry speaks of justice, the general public in 2026 has moved on. There is a growing fatigue among audiences who are struggling with their own economic realities and have little interest in the grievances of the ultra-famous regarding articles written 2 decades ago. This interview was not just a media appearance, it was a blueprint for vengeance. As the Duke prepares for his return to the United Kingdom this coming July, he is arriving not with an olive branch, but with a list of enemies he intends to take down. The question for the British public this morning is whether they are willing to follow him back into the past, or if this latest crusade will be the final act that leaves him completely isolated from the modern world. Stay with us as we continue to bring you updates on this breaking royal crisis throughout the day. While the Duke of Sussex spent his high-profile ITV interview this morning lamenting the loss of his privacy and the intrusion of the press, the global audience has responded with what is being called a trust audit. The paradox at the heart of Harry's argument has reached a breaking point on this Thursday, June 18, 2026. To the viewers watching at home, there is a glaring contradiction between the man who sues for privacy and the man who has spent the last 4 years selling the most intimate details of his family's life for millions of dollars. The skepticism is backed by a growing body of evidence. Media analysts have recently revisited the landmark 2021 Oprah Winfrey interview and identified 17 distinct instances where the claims made by the Duke and Duchess did not align with documented facts. From the secret wedding that never happened to the shifting timelines of internal royal conversations, the public's willingness to take Harry's word as gospel has vanished. One former palace press secretary recently narrated the internal reaction to these discrepancies, stating that the royal household was left in a state of silent disbelief. The secretary reported that the King's office felt it was impossible to defend themselves against a narrative that changed depending on the audience. The secretary allegedly remarked that the truth seemed to be whatever served the couple's brand at that specific moment. However, the most damaging evidence of hypocrisy isn't found in a television interview, but in the hundreds of pages of Harry's own memoir, Spare. While Harry claims to be a victim of media intrusion, he has been identified as a primary perpetrator of privacy violations against his own blood relatives. In order to secure multi-million-dollar advances, the Duke took the very secrets he claimed to cherish and put them on public display. Let us look at the data of these violations. Harry chose to publish private text messages between his wife and the Princess of Wales, Catherine, regarding a bridesmaid dress dispute, a move that many saw as a direct attempt to humiliate his sister-in-law. Even more shocking were the intimate descriptions of his brother William's physical appearance and the details of their private physical altercations. A source close to the Prince of Wales narrated William's reaction to the memoir's release, describing a level of hurt that transcended mere anger. William reportedly told a confidant that his brother had sold their childhood for a paycheck. The Prince of Wales allegedly said that he no longer felt he could speak to Harry about anything of substance, fearing that a private conversation today would become a chapter in a book tomorrow. Perhaps the most egregious example of this privacy paradox occurred when Harry recounted a deeply emotional conversation with King Charles III and Prince William following the funeral of Prince Philip. In the book, Harry exposed his father's desperate plea to his sons. Harry quoted the king as saying, "Please, boys, don't make my final years a misery." By sharing this vulnerable thumb-kin moment, Harry did exactly what he accuses the tabloids of doing. He exploited a private family tragedy for public consumption. As we analyze this hypocrisy protocol, it becomes clear that Harry is attempting to occupy a moral high ground that no longer exists for him. He is playing the role of the victim of a 20-year-old phone hacking scandal, while simultaneously acting as the mastermind behind the exposure of his family's modern-day secrets. To the public watching on this June morning, the Duke isn't fighting for the right to be left alone. He is fighting for the right to be the only person who gets to tell and sell the story. The question is no longer about what the press did to Harry, but about what Harry has done to the very concept of trust. As we continue our coverage on this Thursday, June 18th, 2026, a new and darker chapter of the Kensington Palace archives is being brought to light, revealing the true catalyst for the royal split. For years, the narrative pushed by supporters of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex has been one of victimhood, claiming they were pushed out due to jealousy over their popularity or systemic biases. However, as the sun rises over London this morning, the testimony from those within the palace walls tells a far more disturbing story. The fracture wasn't about headlines or rankings, it was about the treatment of the hard-working individuals who kept the royal machine running. Behind the majestic facade of Kensington Palace, a staff rebellion was brewing long before the couple ever stepped foot in California. These employees, dedicated professionals who often work long hours for what many describe as pennies in the context of London's high cost of living, found themselves in a culture of fear. We are receiving reports of a dictatorial atmosphere where junior staff members were allegedly subjected to verbal abuse and emotional manipulation. One former palace aide, who has remained silent for years, has finally narrated the reality of that high-pressure environment. The aide recalled a specific morning when a young staffer was left in tears after a confrontation with the Duchess. The aide recounted the moment, stating that the atmosphere was poisonous. They allegedly said that it wasn't just about high standards, it was about a total lack of human decency toward those in subordinate positions. This behavior did not go unnoticed by the rest of the family. The real turning point came when Prince William, the Prince of Wales, decided he could no longer stand by while his staff were being targeted. According to sources close to the brothers, William's intervention was direct and uncompromising. A witness to one of these heated discussions narrated the confrontation, claiming that William looked Harry in the eye and said, "You cannot treat people like this. These people are here to help us, not to be your punching bags. It stops now." But the friction wasn't limited to the brothers. The Princess of Wales, Catherine, also reportedly reached her breaking point. Known for her calm and professional demeanor, Catherine allegedly pulled Meghan aside to address her truly patronizing attitude toward the household staff. An insider narrated this private exchange, reporting that Catherine told the Duchess, "This is not how we operate here. These people work tirelessly for this family, and they deserve your respect, not your condescension." Rather than taking this moral correction as an opportunity for growth, the reaction from the Sussex camp was one of immediate retaliation. Harry and Meghan reportedly viewed these interventions as an attack on their autonomy. It was this refusal to adhere to a standard of professional ethics and human kindness that led to the divorce of the two households. The Duke and Duchess didn't just want a different life, they wanted an environment where their behavior went unchecked. When the palace leadership refused to compromise on the protection of their staff, the couple made the decision to split their office and begin the campaign of public grievances we see continuing today. As we look at the headlines this June morning, it's clear that the war Harry is fighting isn't just with the press. It started with a refusal to listen to his own family when they told him that how you treat the little people defines who you really are. The question for the audience today is, can a leader truly claim to be a humanitarian when the people who worked most closely with him feel betrayed? The fallout from these revelations is only beginning to settle. As the morning light intensifies on this Thursday, June 18, 2026, the fallout from the Duke's ITV interview has taken a turn toward the surreal. For years, the global audience has observed a recurring pattern. Whenever the Sussex brand faces a crisis of credibility or a financial setback, the couple reaches for the ultimate protective shield, the legacy of the late Princess Diana. However, new revelations surfacing this morning suggest that this connection has moved beyond tribute and into the realm of what experts are calling a delusional mirage. The most shocking detail to emerge this week comes from royal commentator Kinsey Schofield, who has shed light on the private justifications used behind the scenes in Montecito. According to these reports, the Duchess of Sussex has made claims that border on the supernatural to validate her life choices. One specific instance, narrated by insiders, describes a moment during a private yoga session. While in the downward-facing dog pose, Meghan allegedly claimed to have felt a spiritual presence. She reportedly told her inner circle that the spirit of Princess Diana appeared to her in that moment, whispering words of encouragement and explicitly giving her blessing for the couple's escape to the United States. To many watching this morning, this narrative feels like a desperate attempt to weaponize a tragedy for personal gain. A former friend of the couple narrated the atmosphere in their home, stating that the Duke and Duchess seem to live in a world where they are the only rightful heirs to Diana's martyrdom. The friend allegedly remarked that any criticism of their business deals is immediately framed as history repeating itself, a phrase Harry uses to shut down any rational debate about their professional conduct. However, historians and royal experts are now beginning to dismantle the Mother Teresa myth that Harry has carefully constructed around his mother to serve his current narrative. While Diana was undoubtedly a figure of immense compassion, the reality of her life was far more complex and human than the saintly image Harry portrays. Records from the 1990s paint a picture of a woman struggling with deep emotional wounds. One well-documented incident involves Diana's obsession with a former lover, whom she reportedly called over 300 times in a single night, only to hang up the phone. This isn't the image of a perfect, stoic victim that Harry presents to the media in 2026. It is the image of a vulnerable, hurting woman. By stripping away the humanity of his mother to turn her into a two-dimensional heroine of his own story, critics argue that Harry is doing a disservice to her actual memory. The comparison becomes even more strained when we look at Harry's current legal battles. The Duke has repeatedly claimed that he is fighting the same monsters that hunted his mother, specifically focusing on phone hacking. But a technical breakdown of the facts reveals a significant disconnect. During the 90s, Princess Diana was indeed a victim of landline bugging and eavesdropping, most famously during the Squidgygate scandal. However, there is no technological evidence to support Harry's theory that his mother's mobile phone was hacked in the way he is currently alleging in his high-stakes lawsuits. One veteran investigative journalist narrated the difference between the two eras, stating that Harry is conflating two completely different realities to justify his quest for multi-million-dollar settlements. The journalist noted that while Diana faced genuine, documented surveillance, Harry is chasing shadows from 20 years ago to fuel a modern-day grievance. As we analyze these developments this morning, the question for the public is clear. Is Harry truly honoring his mother's legacy, or is he using her ghost to sell a story that is increasingly detached from the truth? The delusional mirage of spiritual whispers and recycled tragedies is losing its power over an audience that is beginning to see through the smoke and mirrors. Stay tuned as we move toward the final conclusion of this breaking royal saga. It is now 10 in the morning on the East Coast, this Thursday, June 18th, 2026, and the royal narrative has officially crossed the Atlantic into the high-stakes world of American politics. As the revenue streams from multi-million-dollar book deals and podcast contracts begin to run dry, the Duchess of Sussex is reportedly activating a long-dormant ambition. This morning, we are receiving explosive reports that Meghan Markle is preparing a strategic intervention into the upcoming United States election cycle, centering her efforts on a public and vocal endorsement of Kamala Harris. This isn't just about a celebrity supporting a candidate. Insiders are describing this as a calculated quid pro quo for a seat at the table of global power. The strategy is clear. Meghan intends to leverage her massive platform and international name recognition to unlock significant fundraising opportunities for the Harris campaign. In exchange, sources suggest that the Duchess is eyeing a high-profile appointment in a potential future administration, perhaps as a special envoy or a lead strategist for a newly formed digital and social impact office within the White House. One political strategist, who has worked closely with the Democratic establishment, recently narrated the nature of these back-channel discussions. The strategist claimed that the Sussex camp has been very specific about their desires. The strategist reported that Meghan is looking for a role that grants her diplomatic-level influence without the constraints of traditional government service. They allegedly remarked that the Duchess views herself as a bridge between the celebrity elite and the political powerhouse of Washington, D.C. However, this political gamble is fraught with immense risk. As Kamala Harris's own record is being scrutinized with fresh intensity in 2026, opponents are pointing to staggering statistics from her time as California's Attorney General, where she oversaw the incarceration of over 1,500 people for drug-related offenses, a record that critics say contradicts the progressive image she and the Duchess are trying to project. Furthermore, as vice president, her role in managing the southern border has been a point of massive contention, with figures showing that over 8 million people have crossed the border during her tenure. By tying her brand so closely to such a polarizing political figure, Meghan is not just risking her popularity, she is fundamentally altering the nature of her royal status. The most controversial aspect of this move is the Duchess's reported use of her British royal title while engaging in American political lobbying. We have received confirmed reports that Meghan has been cold-calling United States senators, introducing herself as the Duchess of Sussex to discuss policy and voting initiatives. A veteran diplomat recently narrated the shock felt within the State Department regarding these calls. The diplomat stated that using a foreign title of nobility to influence domestic American legislation is unprecedented and dangerously close to a breach of protocol. The diplomat reportedly said that it turns a 1,000-year-old royal title into a cheap lobbying tool, alienating both the British public and the American electorate, who value the separation of foreign royalty and domestic governance. As we watch this political drama unfold on this June morning, the question for the audience is whether a royal title can survive a transition into the brutal arena of partisan politics. Is Meghan building a new empire in the White House, or is she burning the final bridges to her royal past? The stakes have never been higher, and the repercussions of this gamble will be felt from the halls of Congress to the gates of Buckingham Palace. Stay with us as we continue to track this developing story. As we approach the afternoon on this Thursday, June 18th, 2026, the high-stakes political gamble taken by the Duchess of Sussex is revealing its true motivation. It is not just a pursuit of power in the United States. It is a frantic race against a looming threat that could see the Duke of Sussex forcibly removed from American soil. The shadow of the upcoming election is casting a long, dark silhouette over Montecito, and the name at the center of Harry's anxiety is Donald Trump. The reality facing the Duke this morning is a legal sledgehammer of his own making. In his 2023 memoir, Spare, Harry admitted to the past use of various illegal substances, a confession that has catastrophic implications for his immigration status. Under United States law, such admissions can be grounds for visa revocation or even deportation, especially if it is found that he was not transparent on his initial entry application. One former immigration official recently narrated the severity of this oversight, stating that Harry may have walked into a trap The official explained that while a private citizen might fly under the radar, a global public figure who publishes his drug use in a best-selling book leaves the government with very little room for discretion. The official was quoted as saying that if a new administration takes office with a mandate for strict enforcement, Harry's admission becomes a one-way ticket back to a country he spent years criticizing. This threat explains the desperate quid pro quo we are seeing with the current political establishment. Meghan's attempt to secure a role within a future administration is a shield away to ensure that the Duke remains protected from the legal consequences of his own honesty. But while the Sussexes are playing a game of political survival in California, the contrast back in the United Kingdom could not be more profound. Throughout 2025 and into 2026, the world has watched as King Charles III and the Princess of Wales, Catherine, have navigated their own harrowing battles with cancer. Despite the physical and emotional toll of their diagnoses, they have continued to appear before the public with a resilience that has redefined the modern monarchy. While Harry and Meghan are seen as only appearing when there is a product to launch or a grievance to air, the King and Catherine are seen performing their duties with a smile, even in their darkest hours. A senior courtier recently narrated the atmosphere within the palace, describing a sense of quiet victory. The courtier noted that the King's stoic silence in the face of Harry's many interviews has been his most powerful weapon. The courtier reportedly said that the royal family has finally closed the door on the Sussexes, not because they fear Meghan's anger, but because they fear her content calendar. The palace has realized that any act of kindness or reconciliation is immediately processed by the Sussex camp as material for a future podcast, a Netflix episode, or a new chapter in a book. By refusing to engage, the King has effectively starved their brand of its most valuable resource, royal proximity. As we conclude this breaking news report on this 18th of June, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex find themselves in a state of absolute deadlock. After 4 years of trying to build a rival court in America, they are facing the very real possibility of a US deportation order on one side and a permanently locked palace door on the other. The stoic silence of the monarchy has won. The tragedy of the prince's journey is that by the time he realizes the value of the home he left behind, the locks have already been changed, and the records of his past may prevent him from staying anywhere else. Thank you for staying with the Royal Insider Network for this 6-part investigative deep dive. This is a developing story that will shape the monarchy for decades to come. If you want to stay informed as the July return approaches, please subscribe to the Royal Insider Network and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Like this video to support our reporting and join the conversation in the comments below. Is the King right to maintain his silence, or should there be one last chance for Harry? We look forward to hearing your perspectives. For the Royal Insider Network, we will see you in the next update. At exactly 3:26 in the afternoon, on a biting cold Thursday in late winter, a heavy administrative stamp descended upon a document inside the United Kingdom Land Registry. To any passing clerk, it appeared to be nothing more than a standard civil procedure. But hidden within those files was a revelation that would send shockwaves through the corridors of Buckingham Palace. This was not a routine royal filing. It was the quiet, calculated dismantling of a queen's private safety net. Queen Camilla was officially and unilaterally surrendering her ownership of Ray Mill House. For those who follow the intricate lives of the Windsors, this property was far more than just bricks and mortar. Purchased in 1996, using her own divorce settlement funds, Ray Mill was the only piece of land that truly belonged to her. It was entirely separate from the Crown estate, a sanctuary where she was not a majesty, but simply a woman at home. Now, at 3:26 p.m., that independence was being signed away in total secrecy. The most unsettling detail was how the transaction was handled. This legendary estate was not listed on the open market. There were no for sale signs, no public auctions, and no official announcements from the palace press office. Instead, the property was shifted into the shadows of a private trust. This trust is now managed by two specific individuals. Harry Lopes, her son-in-law, and Jake Irwin, a high-level financier. One must ask why a reigning queen would feel the sudden, urgent need to divest herself of her only private asset while her husband is still on the throne. Those close to the transition describe an atmosphere of quiet intensity. One insider recalls the Queen mothering the process with a sharp focus, allegedly telling her legal advisors that the transfer must be completed immediately and that the details were to remain strictly between them and the trustees. She reportedly emphasized that this was her personal legacy, and she wanted it secured before any further shifts in the royal landscape occurred. This is where the dry, administrative reality of a land registry stamp meets a deep, psychological panic. On the surface, it is a simple transfer of title, but underneath, it reflects a queen who is moving her pieces across the board with uncharacteristic haste. Historically, Ray Mill House was her escape. She was often heard telling her close confidants that no matter what happened at the palace, she always had a key to her own front door where she could kick off her shoes and be herself. By handing that key to a private trust, she is effectively closing a chapter of her life that represents her ultimate freedom. The timing is impossible to ignore. As King Charles navigates the heavy burdens of the monarchy, his wife is quietly ensuring that her most valuable private resource is tied up in a legal structure far beyond the reach of public scrutiny or royal protocol. It suggests a woman who is not just planning for the future, but perhaps protecting herself from it. Why would she entrust this specific property to Harry Lopes and Jake Irwin now? Why the rush to finalize the paperwork at exactly 3:26 on a nondescript Thursday? The bureaucratic ink may be dry, but the questions surrounding this hidden maneuver are only beginning to surface. This was not just a signature on a page, it was a tactical retreat disguised as a legal filing, executed at a moment when the world was supposed to be looking the other way. The transition of power within the British monarchy is often depicted through crowns and ceremonies, but the true revolution is currently unfolding within the cold, precise spreadsheets of the Duchy of Cornwall. Between early 2025 and mid-2026, the atmosphere within the London management offices of the Duchy shifted from tradition to a sharp corporate reality. Prince William has fully stepped into his role as the Duke of Cornwall, inheriting an estate valued at over £1 billion. With this title comes a staggering net annual income of £30 million money that is entirely under his control. For the first time, the heir to the throne has the financial autonomy to rewrite the rules of the royal household, and his first moves have been nothing short of a calculated strike. The most shocking signal of this new era was the sudden public removal of Annabel Elliot from the royal payroll. For 20 years, Annabel, the sister of Queen Camilla, was a fixture in King Charles's professional life, serving as his primary interior designer. She was the hand behind the aesthetic of his most private estates. But as William took the reins of the billion-pound portfolio, that 2-decade-long tenure was terminated with clinical efficiency. Those within the prince's inner circle at Kensington Palace describe a leader who is uninterested in the sentimental alliances of the past. One senior aide reportedly overheard the prince discussing the necessity of these cuts during a high-level briefing. William was quoted as saying that the duchy is a professional entity, not a family employment agency. He reportedly emphasized that from now on, every contract must be awarded based on competitive merit rather than personal proximity to the throne. This was not just a change in decorators. It was a clear, unyielding message to the Parker Bowles family that their era of quiet influence was being dismantled. This financial purge deepened when William ordered a massive restructuring of the duchy's commercial investments. He initiated the liquidation and reallocation of 20% of the portfolio, a move involving £500 million. By shifting these funds into new, modern sectors, he effectively severed the subtle financial channels and legacy perks that had benefited the Parker Bowles family for years. The prince is essentially draining the swamp of royal nepotism, using his constitutional authority as the heir to execute what many are calling a silent audit. He does not need to shout, and he does not need to issue press releases. He is using the power of the ledger to erase a dynasty's footprint. Observers at the duchy's headquarters noted that William's approach is one of ruthless modernization. He is reportedly focused on a future where the royal family's finances are beyond reproach, even if it means alienating those who have stood by his father's side for decades. This explains the sudden urgency we saw on that cold Thursday at the land registry, when Queen Camilla's sister was removed from the payroll and £500 million began to move. The Queen realised that the traditional protections of the Crown were being replaced by William's audit blade. The Prince of Wales is no longer just the son waiting in the wings. He is a billionaire landlord who has begun to redefine who belongs in the inner circle and who is a liability. As the commercial map of the monarchy is redrawn, the question remains: how far will William go to ensure that only his vision of the future remains? The lines have been drawn, and for the Parker-Bowles family, the borders of their influence are shrinking by the day. Behind the sprawling, peaceful beauty of Sandringham House in Norfolk, the thick stone walls have recently sheltered a conversation that confirms the shifting tides of the British monarchy. This is no longer just a matter of administrative stamps or interior design contracts. It has evolved into a high-stakes battle of wits for the very soul of the institution. To understand why Queen Camilla is moving her private assets into the shadows, one must look at the woman standing quietly but firmly in the opposite corner, Princess Anne. The Princess Royal's history with the Parker-Bowles family is deep, complex, and stretches back long before the world recognized Camilla as a future queen. In the early 1970s, Anne was famously linked to Andrew Parker-Bowles, the man who would eventually become Camilla's first husband. For over 50 years, Anne has observed every strategic move and social maneuver made by the Parker-Bowles clan. She understands their patterns, their ambitions, and their vulnerabilities better than anyone else in the royal household. While others might see family tradition, Anne sees a legacy of influence that she believes must be managed with extreme caution. During a private retreat at Sandringham, sources close to the royal household indicate that King Charles expressed significant distress over the recent financial purges led by his son, Prince William. The king, who has always sought to maintain a delicate balance between his family and his crown, reportedly feared that William's aggressive restructuring was creating an irreparable rift. He saw the removal of Camilla's sister from the payroll and the sudden auditing of duchy assets as a personal blow to his wife's security. However, the Princess Royal, known for her legendary work ethic and unwavering dedication to the crown, reportedly met her brother's concerns with a chillingly pragmatic response. In a conversation that has since echoed through the palace corridors, Anne is said to have reminded the king of the cold reality of their position. When the king questioned if William was being too harsh, Anne reportedly stood her ground, explaining that the prince was not acting out of malice or personal vendetta. She told her brother that William was simply fulfilling a constitutional duty to clean the books. The princess was quoted as saying that the institution requires a level of lean efficiency to survive in the modern world. She reportedly looked the king in the eye and stated that the monarchy cannot afford to function as a safety net for extended relatives or legacy favors. In her view, the survival of the throne depends on this new, rigorous transparency, regardless of whose feelings are hurt in the process. This reveals a formidable, unspoken alliance between the king's sister and his heir. While Prince William executes the tactical strikes from Kensington Palace, cutting financial ties and liquidating commercial interests, Princess Anne provides the ideological shield from within the inner circle. It is a psychological pincer movement. One side handles the ledger, while the other ensures that no emotional appeals can derail the mission. This new, strict order has left the Queen in an increasingly isolated position. The haste with which she surrendered her property at 3:26 in the afternoon becomes far more logical when viewed through the lens of this Sandringham confrontation. She isn't just facing a rebellious nephew, she is facing the combined discipline of two of the most traditional and focused members of the royal family. As the sun sets over the Norfolk estate, the message is clear. The old ways of quiet influence are being systematically dismantled. The map of royal power is being redrawn, and for those who once felt secure under the old guard, the landscape has become dangerously unfamiliar. In the high-stakes world of the British monarchy, there is a brutal legal reality that few dare to discuss openly: the concept of the cliff edge. While the world sees a queen sitting beside a king, the cold machinery of the British Constitution sees something far more temporary. For Queen Camilla, the clock is not just ticking on a reign, it is ticking on the very survival and financial security of her own bloodline. This is the era of realpolitik, where the glitter of the crown fades into the harsh light of inheritance law and political displacement. The central figures in this unfolding drama are not the princes or princesses we see on the balcony, but two private citizens, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes. They are Camilla's children from her first marriage, and in the eyes of the British state, they are commoners. They have no titles, no place in the line of succession, and absolutely no claim to the billion-pound resources of the Crown estate. As long as King Charles is on the throne, they enjoy the warmth of royal proximity, but the moment that reign ends, they will be pushed to the furthest margins of the institution. Camilla, now in her late 70s, is acutely aware of her impending status as a Queen Dowager. Unlike the late Queen Mother, who was the parent of the reigning monarch, Camilla will be the stepmother of the new king. Her influence will evaporate overnight. Those close to her legal team suggest that she has spent late nights reviewing the grim reality of what a King William era looks like for her family. One advisor reportedly noted that the Queen is under no illusions. She knows that when the crown passes to William, the doors to the royal coffers will be bolted shut for anyone with the last name Parker Bowles. This is the true motivation behind the great financial migration we are witnessing. The transfer of Ray Mill House, the only asset truly hers, into a private trust, was not a sentimental decision. It was a desperate defensive maneuver. By moving the property now, she is navigating a complex web of British civil law to avoid the catastrophic inheritance taxes that would be triggered upon her passing. More importantly, she is shielding her assets from the William audit. The Prince of Wales has already demonstrated his intent to scrutinise every penny flowing through the royal estates. If Ray Mill House remained part of her personal estate at the time of a transition, it could fall under the intense oversight of a king determined to slim down the monarchy's footprint. By shifting the property to a trust managed by her son-in-law, Harry Lopes, she has effectively placed a fortress around her children's future. She is using the tools of a private citizen to fight a battle that she cannot win as a queen. The atmosphere in her private quarters is said to be one of focused survivalism. She is reportedly determined that her children will not be left vulnerable when the protective shield of King Charles is gone. Observers have described her as a woman who is securing the lifeboats while the ship is still in calm waters. She knows that William's reign will be defined by a strict, almost clinical adherence to duty and transparency. A world where the perks once granted to his father's inner circle will be treated as liabilities. The signature at 3:26 in the afternoon was the ultimate act of maternal protection. It was the moment a queen recognized that her royal title was a temporary loan, but her role as a mother was permanent. As the administrative gears of the land registry turned, they signaled the end of an era of royal indulgence and the beginning of a cold, new reality. The Parker Bowles family is being quietly prepared for a life outside the palace walls, but the question that remains is whether these legal fortifications will be enough to withstand the coming storm of the next reign. The pieces are set, the trust is locked, and the future of a dynasty now hangs on the strength of a few sheets of private paper. The quietest wars are often fought with paper, and in early 2026, the grand hallways of the royal residences became a battlefield of ink and bureaucracy. While the public saw a united front of the House of Windsor, a silent, administrative coup was unfolding within the offices of the private secretaries. These are the gatekeepers, the highly skilled advisors who manage every minute of a royal's life. But now, the veteran team at Clarence House and the rising young guard at Kensington Palace were no longer speaking the same language. Sources within the palace describe an atmosphere of unprecedented frostiness. Top-secret memos began to circulate between the two offices, and the tone was clinical, sharp, and increasingly restrictive. These documents were not about public appearances, they were about the tightening of the logistical noose around Queen Camilla's private life. One memo from Kensington Palace reportedly raised pointed questions about operational efficiencies, a polite way of asking why the taxpayer was still funding the security and transport for the Queen's personal estate at Ray Mill House. The pressure soon manifested in the form of budget cuts. For years, Camilla had enjoyed the seamless transition between her royal duties and her private sanctuary, often supported by private flights and a dedicated security detail. However, the order from Kensington was clear. The Duchy of Cornwall, now under William's control, would no longer subsidize travel to non-crown properties. One high-level aide recounted a moment of profound tension during a scheduling meeting, when a request was made for a private helicopter to transport the Queen to her private residence. A Kensington representative reportedly replied with cold precision. The response was not a no, but a question. On what constitutional grounds is this transport being justified for a private weekend? The implication was devastating. The Prince of Wales was effectively telling the Queen that her private independence would now come at a significant personal cost. If she wanted her sanctuary, she would have to pay for it herself, and she would have to do so without the royal security bubble she had relied on for decades. But the most subtle and perhaps most painful blow came in the realm of soft power. For decades, the patronages of major charities have been the lifeblood of royal influence. Camilla had carefully cultivated several high-profile organizations, particularly those focused on literacy and the arts. Yet, in the early months of 2026, a quiet redistribution began. Without any grand announcements or official press releases, the leadership of several prestigious funds began to shift. Internal documents started appearing with new letterheads. Organizations that had long looked to Camilla for guidance were being realigned with the Princess of Wales. Catherine was being positioned as the new face of these institutions, while Camilla's name was quietly moved to the background. When an advisor to the Queen reportedly questioned this shift, the explanation given was that the monarchy needed to future-proof its alliances. It was a clear, unspoken ultimatum. The future belongs to Catherine, and the Queen's influence is being systematically sunsetted. This is the reality of the administrative clinch. There are no raised voices, no public scandals, and no dramatic confrontations. Instead, there is the slow, steady reduction of privileges. Camilla is being made to feel like a guest in her own palace, isolated by the very secretaries who are supposed to serve the institution. The messages aren't delivered in person. They arrive in red folders, typed in elegant font, stripping away the infrastructure of her life piece by piece. As the offices at Kensington Palace expand their reach, the walls around Clarence House seem to be closing in. The Queen is discovering that in the modern monarchy, you don't need to be exiled to be removed from power, you just need to be budgeted out of existence. As the sun sets over Buckingham Palace in this middle of June, 2026, the atmosphere within the royal residence has reached a point of quiet, irreversible transformation. King Charles III, now 76 years old and continuing his courageous battle with illness, finds himself in a position that no monarch desires, watching the dawn of the next reign, while he still holds the scepter. The balance of power hasn't just shifted, it has completely migrated to the opposite side of the palace, leaving the king as a majestic figurehead over a machinery he no longer fully controls. The most poignant evidence of this shift was a 40-minute phone call between the king and his sister, Princess Anne, just days ago. According to those familiar with the palace's internal rhythms, the conversation ended not with an agreement, but with a long, heavy silence. The king, sensing the isolation of his wife and her family, reportedly looked for a way to slow the pace of William's reforms. But Anne's silence spoke volumes. It was the silence of an institution that had already made its choice. The new order, led by the Prince of Wales, is no longer a plan for the future, it is the reality of the present. For Queen Camilla, the image presented to the world remains one of duty and tradition. She still wears the crown at state banquets and stands beside the king during trooping the colour. But those who remember the administrative stamp at 3:26 p.m. on that cold Thursday at the land registry know the truth. That signature was her ultimate admission of defeat. She realised that while she could keep her title for now, she could not keep her influence. By surrendering Raymill House to a private trust, she effectively packed her bags for a future that no longer includes the inner sanctum of royal power. Raymill House is now safe, tucked away behind legal barriers that even a King William cannot easily breach. Her children, Tom and Laura, have their financial fortress, but the price of that safety has been the total isolation of the Clarence House faction. The secretaries, the aides, and the advisors who once looked to Camilla for direction now find their emails unanswered and their budgets frozen by the clinical efficiency of Kensington Palace. The most striking aspect of June 2026 is the contrast between the public facade and the internal truth. To the cameras, the House of Windsor appears as a united front, a family bound by history and service. But inside the institution, the purge is complete. Prince William has successfully established his reign before he has even reached the throne. He has used the cold tools of auditing, the removal of legacy patronages, and the restructuring of billion-pound estates to ensure that the monarchy he inherits will be entirely his own. Camilla remains a queen in name, but she is a woman who has already accepted her exile. She has secured the only piece of land that was ever truly hers, knowing that once the reign of Charles ends, the gates of the other palaces will likely close behind her. The Battle of Wits at Sandringham, the skirmishes between private secretaries, and the strategic movement of assets have all led to this moment. The transition is over. The new era has begun. The question that remains for history is whether this ruthless modernization will save the monarchy or strip it of the very human loyalties that once held it together. As the king rests and the prince takes the lead, the silent halls of Buckingham Palace hold the secrets of a family that chose the survival of the crown over the comfort of its own members. What do you think about Prince William's decisive moves to reshape the royal family's future? Is this the necessary modernization the monarchy needs? Or has the cost of this silent audit been too high for those who served the king? Share your thoughts in the comments below as we continue to track these unfolding events. For more deep dives into the hidden power plays of the British monarchy, stay tuned to the Royal Insider Network. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to never miss an update on the stories the palace doesn't want you to hear. $1,500,000. That is the staggering price of a single legal defeat. And for Prince Harry, it is only the beginning of a financial freefall. As we move into early 2026, the Duke of Sussex finds himself trapped in a high-stakes gamble that is bleeding his bank account dry and severing the final threads of his relationship with the British monarchy. The London courts have delivered a final, crushing blow, rejecting his appeal against the Royal and VIP Executive Committee, widely known as RAVEC. This legal crusade to regain taxpayer-funded security has now cost Harry over £1.2 million in personal legal fees alone. This is no longer just a quest for justice. It is a $3 million crisis that has left the Duke isolated and facing a mounting fiscal nightmare. While the legal bills pile up in London, the reality at home in Montecito, California, is even more taxing. Maintaining a private, elite security detail for his family is estimated to cost between $2 million and $3 million every single year. For the Sussexes, this is not a luxury. It is a massive financial burden that now consumes nearly 15 to 20% of their total annual net income. With the massive media contracts that once fueled their lifestyle beginning to dry up, the walls are closing in. The dream of total independence is being suffocated by the sheer cost of staying safe in a world they chose to navigate on their own terms. But the true spark that has ignited this international crisis is not just about the money, it is about the children. Harry has reportedly issued a chilling and definitive ultimatum to his father, King Charles III, and the British government. He has made his position crystal clear, stating through his legal representatives and inner circle that he refuses to bring his children back to British soil under the current circumstances. He has declared that 7-year-old Archie and 5-year-old Lilibet will not set foot in the United Kingdom unless the government guarantees 100% of their armed protection, funded entirely by the British taxpayer. The Duke's message to the palace is blunt. If the security is not reinstated, the king will not see his grandchildren. Royal analysts are describing this move as a calculated act of emotional blackmail. Harry is accused of using Archie and Lilibet as high-value bargaining chips, attempting to force the king's hand to intervene in a Home Office decision. He knows that the king is desperate to be a present grandfather, yet he is leveraging that biological bond against the British public's wallet. By demanding that the taxpayers foot the bill for his family's safety, Harry has turned a private security dispute into a full-scale public war. He is essentially telling the Crown that his presence and the presence of the next generation of royals comes with a non-negotiable price tag. It is a desperate play by a man who feels cornered. As the legal fees climb toward the $2 million mark and the annual cost of his California fortress continues to drain his resources, the question is no longer if Harry can win, but how much he is willing to lose. This $3 million gamble has moved beyond the courtroom. It is now a battle for the very heart of the royal family, and the price of failure has never been higher. King Charles III sits atop a financial empire that makes most private fortunes look like pocket change. In the last fiscal year alone, the Duchy of Lancaster generated over £26 million in net revenue. This is the ultimate war chest, the lifeblood of the British monarchy, and the king holds the keys to the vault. Yet, for Prince Harry, this vault remains permanently and chillingly sealed. Since the pivotal moment of Megxit in 2020, the king has maintained a firm, unyielding line, completely cutting off the financial pipeline that once funded the Duke's office and his global lifestyle. It is a calculated exercise of economic authority, a clear message that once you walk away from the firm, you walk away from its protection and its treasury. While the money flows within the palace walls, the personal bond is fracturing under the weight of time and a looming health crisis. As the king continues his recovery from the cancer treatments that began in 2024, the window for any meaningful reconciliation is narrowing by the day. Harry's scheduled visits to his homeland have become brief, frantic affairs, often lasting only a few days at a time. He is a man in a hurry, flying thousands of miles across the Atlantic, only to find a wall of silence and a father whose schedule is suddenly, and perhaps conveniently, full. Instead of an open confrontation or a public shouting match, the palace has adopted a strategy of sophisticated refusal. They have offered Harry a very specific, very controlled olive branch, the 90-minute border at Balmoral Castle. The proposal from the palace was simple and strategically secure. Harry was told he could land his private jet at Aberdeen Airport and be whisked away in a 90-minute drive directly to the fortified gates of the royal estate in Scotland. For those 90 minutes of travel, and for the duration of his stay within the castle walls, he would be under the full, temporary protection of the Crown's elite security apparatus. It was a safe zone, a golden cage where he could finally sit face-to-face with his father, without the constant shadow of the security debate hanging over them. However, Harry's reaction to this offer revealed the true, bitter depth of the divide. Through his representatives, the Duke reportedly made it clear that a 90-minute bubble of safety was an insult, not a solution. He argued that he should not have to fly into a specific airport and be driven down a specific road just to feel safe in his own country. He isn't looking for a weekend of temporary protection at his father's convenience. He is demanding a permanent, lifelong commitment to his family's security on British soil, funded by the taxpayers. To the Duke, accepting the Balmoral offer would be seen as a total surrender. It would be an admission that he only deserves safety when he is under the king's direct control and on the king's terms. By turning down this secure opportunity to visit his father during a critical period of illness, Harry has sent a shockwave through the royal inner circle. Royal analysts suggest that this decision proves his legal ego and his financial demands have finally eclipsed his family loyalty. The king's silence has become his loudest answer. He has provided a path to peace, however narrow, but Harry refuses to walk it unless the road is paved with the public's money. The 90-minute drive from the airport to the castle has become the most contested territory in the world, a boundary of pride and broken trust that no amount of security can ever truly bridge. The golden empire of the Sussexes, once valued in the hundreds of millions, is facing a cold, hard mathematical reality that no amount of PR can hide. The era of the power couple is rapidly transitioning into a struggle for individual survival. It began with the quiet but devastating collapse of their $20 million deal with Spotify, a total loss for their podcasting ambitions that sent shockwaves through the industry. Now, all eyes are on the ticking clock of their $100 million contract with Netflix. Set to expire at the end of 2026, the pressure to perform has reached a breaking point. The numbers are undeniable. Data shows that viewership for their content has plummeted by a staggering 70% compared to their peak in 2022. The world, it seems, is moving on, and the financial foundation they built their new lives upon is beginning to crack. This financial freefall has triggered what experts are calling a brand divorce. For years, Harry and Meghan were inseparable, a unified front against the world. But as the money dries up, a new, more desperate strategy has emerged: the total separation of their professional identities. This shift was recently crystallized when Prince Harry appeared solo on Time magazine's prestigious list of influential figures in the world of sports. For the first time in their post-royal journey, Harry was standing in the spotlight alone, recognized for his own merits and his work with the Invictus Games. Behind the gates of their Montecito estate, this solo recognition reportedly sparked an internal firestorm. Sources close to the couple describe an atmosphere of profound tension. While Harry's individual stock rose, Meghan's presence in their major joint projects has effectively dropped to 0%. The media has been filled with reports of a crisis of identity within their team. People close to the situation have whispered about the deep frustration boiling over behind the scenes. One insider remarked on the situation, saying, "She spent years and millions of dollars crafting a joint image where they were equal partners in every headline. To see him take the Time magazine honor alone, after she had invested so much of her own personal brand into their shared success, was a bitter pill to swallow." It is reported that Meghan felt completely sidelined, watching from the wings as the narrative shifted toward Harry's individual redemption, while she remained in the shadows of their failing joint ventures. This strategic split is seen by many as a last-ditch effort to save Harry's reputation by distancing him from the controversies that have hounded the couple as a pair. But the cost of this separation is more than just professional, it's personal. The narrative of us against the world has been replaced by a frantic search for individual relevance. As Harry prepares for more solo engagements and Meghan focuses on her own independent business ventures, the Sussex brand is being pulled in two different directions. The question looming over their future is no longer about their next big deal, but whether their partnership can survive the end of their joint bankability. With their viewership in a tailspin and their biggest financial lifeline nearing its end, the couple is facing a choice: evolve or disappear. The united front is gone, replaced by two individuals fighting for a seat at the table in a world that is increasingly skeptical of their brand. As the walls of their media empire continue to thin, the silence between their two camps speaks louder than any press release ever could. The gamble of a lifetime is reaching its final stage, and the stakes have moved beyond mere millions. It is now a battle for the very future of their legacy. $100,000, that is the price tag for a single appearance, a single wardrobe, and a single weekend of luxury. While the Invictus Games were founded on the noble sacrifice of wounded veterans, the financial reality behind the scenes has shifted into something far more controversial. As the preparations for the 2025 and 2026 games in Vancouver and Whistler reach a fever pitch, the numbers are starting to tell a story that many find impossible to ignore. Audited reports have revealed that the operating budget for the upcoming games has surged by a staggering 35%, driven almost entirely by the skyrocketing costs of logistics and elite security. But it isn't the cost of the athletes that is causing the most outrage. It is the leaked financial documents detailing the personal expenses of the Duchess of Sussex. The reports suggest that Meghan Markle's wardrobe, private jet travel, and VIP accommodations for recent Invictus events have exceeded $100,000 per trip. To put that into perspective, that single travel bill is higher than the entire recovery fund allocated for a group of 10 wounded veterans. The optics are devastating. What began as a platform to honor the courage of those who served has become, in the eyes of many critics, a taxpayer-funded fashion runway. The focus has drifted from the battlefield to the boutique, creating a massive financial hole that the organization is struggling to fill. This isn't just a budget crisis, it is a fundamental betrayal of the project's original soul. The Invictus Games were Prince Harry's proudest legacy, the one area where he remained untouchable and universally respected. However, that legacy is now being accused of commercial corruption. The very people the games were built for, the veterans who represent 100% of the reason for the tournament's existence, are starting to speak out. There is a growing wave of resentment from the ranks of those who have competed, with some accusing the Sussexes of turning a humanitarian mission into a personal branding exercise. One veteran, who wished to remain anonymous, shared a sentiment that is becoming increasingly common within the community. He noted that they used to feel like the heroes of the story, but now, they feel like they are just the background scenery for Meghan's next photo op. He described the atmosphere as having shifted from one of mutual respect to one of high-gloss celebrity worship. He lamented that they are there to show the world their strength after injury, yet the headlines are only ever about what the Duchess is wearing or which designer brand she is promoting during her empty, scripted speeches. This shift has created an internal crisis for the Sussex Empire. Harry's advisors are reportedly worried that the one thing that gave him true credibility is being hollowed out by the demands of their Hollywood lifestyle. When the cost of a private jet for one person outweighs the medical support for 10 heroes, the moral high ground begins to crumble. The Duke is now trapped between the mission he loves and the brand he has built with his wife. As the 35% budget increase puts more pressure on donors and sponsors, the question is no longer just about who wins the gold medals. It is about whether the Invictus Games can survive the weight of the Sussexes' personal expenses. The world is watching as the original spirit of the Games is tested by the lure of the spotlight and the drain of the bank account. If the veterans continue to feel like props in a commercial play, the damage to Harry's final shred of royal duty may be irreversible. The glitz and glamour are there, but beneath the surface, the foundation is cracking under the weight of a $100,000 wardrobe. 1 billion people. That is the projected global audience for the 2026 World Cup final in the United States. In the sprawling VIP lounges, where the world's most powerful billionaires and A-list icons gather to trade handshakes and finalize multi-million-dollar deals, the atmosphere is electric. But as the cameras pan across the sea of famous faces, there is one glaring, unmistakable absence. Prince Harry, the man who once held the ultimate VIP pass to every exclusive event on the planet, has been left off the guest list. This is more than just a social snub. It is the definitive collapse of his intangible asset, his Hollywood network, and a devastating blow to his personal brand value. The financial cost of this social isolation is staggering. Experts in brand strategy estimate that by losing his connection to the elite network of David Beckham and the surrounding alliance of global superstars, the Sussexes have seen a 30% drop in their access to high-level venture capital funds and luxury brand ambassadorships. In the world of the ultra-wealthy, proximity is profit. Without the Beckham seal of approval, Harry and Meghan are finding that the doors to the most lucrative investment circles in America are swinging shut. They are no longer the it couple that every CEO wants at their table. They are becoming a liability that the elite would rather avoid. The roots of this isolation trace back to a single bitter moment in 2018 that has finally reached its breaking point. At Harry's personal request, David Beckham flew more than 10,500 miles to Australia to support the Invictus Games. He was a loyal friend, a global icon, and he was there to lend his immense star power to Harry's cause. But when he arrived, he was met with a wall of cold indifference. Insiders, who were on the ground at the time, describe a scene of profound tension. One witness recalled the moment, stating through a narrative lens, David was there, ready to stand by Harry's side as he always had. But the Duke wouldn't even make eye contact. Meghan had become convinced that the Beckhams were the ones leaking private stories to the British press. She had planted a seed of suspicion, and Harry, caught in the middle, chose to freeze out one of his most loyal allies. The betrayal was public, and for the Beckhams, it was unforgivable. Fast forward to 2026, and the world has made its final decision. The American sports and entertainment elite have moved toward the king of football, David Beckham. His success with Inter Miami and his status as a statesman of global sport have made him untouchable. Meanwhile, Harry has been cast adrift. The prince, who was once the centerpiece of every high society gathering, is now viewed as an obsolete figure, a relic of a royal drama that the American public is increasingly tired of hearing about. The strategy to split their brand, to try and reclaim individual relevance, seems to have backfired. While Harry watches from the sidelines, the Beckham empire is thriving, and the Hollywood elite are following the money and the stability. The Duke of Sussex is learning the hardest lesson of all. In a world built on prestige and relationships, you cannot survive by burning the very bridges that carried you to the top. As the lights of the World Cup stadium shine on everyone who is someone, Harry is left in the shadows of his own making, wondering if the price of his new life was simply too high. The elite have closed ranks, and the question is no longer about when Harry will return to the fold, but if anyone will even notice he's gone. $100 million, $1.5 million in legal fees. A $3 million annual security bill. In the high-stakes world of the Sussexes, these are the numbers that define their existence. But as we move deeper into 2026, a much more devastating figure is beginning to emerge, and it's one that no amount of Netflix money can fix. The currency of royalty isn't just gold, it is time. And for Prince Harry, time is a non-renewable asset that is rapidly running out. Every million-dollar contract and every legal victory in the London courts is becoming hollow, because the very thing that fuels his value, his connection to the British crown, is withering away. Without the proximity to the throne, he is no longer a global prince. He is simply another celebrity in an oversaturated California market, struggling to remain relevant as the original royal brand fades into the background. The true tragedy of this financial and social war lies in a hauntingly familiar cycle. For nearly 3 decades, Harry has centered his life story on the trauma of 1997, the year he lost his mother at the age of 12. That single event has shaped 90% of his public identity and his drive for independence. Yet, in a twist of fate that royal observers find chilling, he is now presiding over a different kind of loss for his own children. The statistics of this family fracture are brutal. At 7 years old, Prince Archie has spent 85% of his life entirely outside of the United Kingdom. 5-year-old Princess Lilibet has set foot in her father's homeland only once in her entire life. They are growing up as strangers to the heritage that defines their names. A source close to the palace recently remarked on this growing distance, stating, "He talks about the pain of being a motherless son, yet he is creating a reality where his father is a grandfather in name only." The king is 77, fighting a battle with cancer that began in 2024, and every day that passes without a visit is a day that can never be reclaimed. Harry is winning the battle over security costs, but he is losing the war for his children's history. The clock is not just ticking for the king, it is ticking for the Sussex's place in the future of the monarchy. While Harry waits for a guarantee of 100% taxpayer-funded security, his brother, Prince William, is preparing for a reign that looks increasingly like it will have no room for a Sussex branch. The 90-minute drive to Balmoral that Harry refused wasn't just a security offer, it was perhaps the final invitation to sit at the table before the doors are locked for good. If the day comes when the security disputes are settled and the bank accounts are replenished, it may already be too late. The king's health and the children's formative years are moving in opposite directions. The opportunity for Archie and Lilibet to know their grandfather, or for Harry and William to find a path back to brotherhood, is a window that is slowly but surely closing. In the pursuit of financial independence and personal safety, Harry has built a fortress in Montecito. But as he stands inside those walls, surrounded by his private security detail, he faces the most ruthless financial reality of all. You can't buy back a missed goodbye, and you can't sue for more time. The gamble for $3 million has cost him something far more expensive: his legacy. What do you think? Has the cost of independence finally exceeded its value? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. For the latest in-depth analysis and breaking updates on the House of Windsor, make sure to stay tuned to the Royal Insider Network. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of the royal story. The soft light of dawn filters through the south-facing windows of the small breakfast room at Clarence House, casting long shadows across a table laden with more than just porcelain and tea. King Charles III sits before a heavy, leather-bound folder that represents the beating heart of his private wealth, the latest restructuring of the Duchy of Lancaster's budget. This isn't just a routine audit, it is a document that carries the power to redefine the financial boundaries of the British monarchy. Hidden deep within the technical jargon of the report is a specific, high-stakes clause that could ignite a new wave of internal conflict. The proposal on the King's desk suggests a radical shift in how the Crown's wealth is distributed. It calls for the diversion of 15% of the surplus revenue from the Duchy's massive portfolio. We are talking about a staggering sum, approximately £6,800,000. Officially, this capital is intended to launch a brand new initiative, the National Culinary Heritage Fund. On paper, it looks like a noble project designed to preserve the nation's food traditions. But in the hushed intimacy of the breakfast room, the true motivation behind this multi-million-pound fund is far more personal. Queen Camilla sits across from the king, her movements deliberate and calm as she pours a fresh cup of Darjeeling tea. She doesn't lead with a demand, she leads with a mother's quiet observation. In a voice filled with soft but firm conviction, she speaks about her son, Tom. She reminds Charles that Tom has lived his life in a very difficult shadow for over 20 years. She recounts the 2 decades of relentless media pressure, the intrusive lenses of the paparazzi, and the constant public judgment that Tom has endured, all without the protection of a royal title or a single penny of official financial support. She whispers to the king that while others have walked away with multi-million-dollar media deals and complained about their lack of security, her son has simply stayed silent and faced the fire. Camilla's strategy is a masterclass in emotional leverage. She touches on the king's sense of fairness and his underlying guilt as a stepfather who has risen to the highest office in the land while those he loves remain vulnerable. She frames the new £6,800,000 fund not as a gift, but as a long overdue shield for a man who has been a collateral target of the royal spotlight for half of his life. King Charles, a man often caught between the rigid demands of his crown and the soft requests of his heart, feels the weight of the moment. He knows that every pound diverted from the surplus is a pound that won't go to traditional royal projects or the established heirs. Yet, in this minute of profound vulnerability, the husband eclipses the monarch. He looks at the Culinary Heritage Fund, a project that Tom, a professional food critic, is uniquely positioned to influence, and he sees a way to settle a debt of conscience. Without a word, the king picks up his pen. With a sharp, quick motion, he scrawls his initials in the corner of the document. That single mark authorizes the movement of millions. The sunrise audit is complete, but its repercussions are only just beginning. As the sun rises higher over London, a secret financial pipeline has been opened. It is a decision that prioritizes the new family over the old, setting the stage for a fiscal drama that the rest of the House of Windsor is not yet prepared to face. The silence of Clarence House has never been more expensive. 8:12 in the morning. Inside the high-security private office at Gatcombe Park, the atmosphere is as cold as the Gloucestershire mist outside. Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, is already at her desk, but her focus isn't on her usual schedule of charity engagements. Her eyes are fixed on a single, encrypted email that has just arrived from a veteran accountant within the Privy Purse, a man who has served the royal finances for over 30 years. The details within this message are enough to shake the very foundations of the King's recent budget decisions. The report reveals that the 15% revenue diversion signed earlier that morning at Clarence House carries a hidden, much more controversial rider. In addition to the multi-million-pound Heritage Fund, the document includes a secret annual security package valued at £450,000. But here is the detail that transforms this from a family matter into a national scandal. This nearly £500,000 sum is not being drawn from the King's private wealth. It is being funneled from taxpayer-funded resources, earmarked specifically for the private office and protection of Tom Parker Bowles. As she reads the numbers, Princess Anne's reaction is not one of outward shock, but of a freezing, calculated anger. For a woman who has spent her entire life as the most hard-working member of the family, this is a bridge too far. She doesn't just see a waste of £450,000. She sees a direct betrayal of the legacy left by her mother, Queen Elizabeth II. The late Queen spent 7 decades carefully cultivating an image of a slimmed-down and fiscally responsible monarchy, often making personal sacrifices to ensure the public's trust remained intact. Now, Anne watches as her brother risks that entire reputation for the sake of domestic peace. The Princess Royal reportedly turned to a senior staff member in the room, her voice steady but sharp, with a bitterness she rarely shows. She told the aide that the King was allowing his heart to govern his head, and in doing so, he was putting a target on the monarchy's back. She is said to have remarked that if the public ever discovered the taxpayer was footed the bill for a non-royal security, while the official family was being trimmed down, the backlash would be irreparable. In that moment, Anne realized the weight of her isolation. She saw that she was the only one left in the inner circle, willing to play the role of the villain, the only one with the steel to confront the King and tell him no. She understands the game being played. By framing this as a culinary heritage project, the palace hoped the £450,000 for security would remain buried in the fine print. But Anne has always had a keen eye for the truth behind the curtain. She views this not as a father helping a son, but as a dangerous precedent that threatens the constitutional stability of the House of Windsor. The silence in her office is broken only by the sound of her phone being picked up. The call she is about to make is to her brother, the King, and it will not be a conversation between siblings. It is a confrontation between the enforcer of royal discipline and a monarch who has just made a very expensive mistake. As she prepares to challenge the £450,000 secret, the tension between Gatcombe Park and Clarence House has never been more electric. The Princess Royal is standing her ground, ready to defend her mother's frugal legacy, even if it means an all-out war within the palace walls. The question is no longer about the money, it's about who truly holds the moral compass of the crown. 2:30 in the afternoon. The East Corridor of Buckingham Palace is a place of gilded silence and immense history, a long stretch of red carpet and oil paintings that serves as the artery between the private apartments and the staterooms. But today, the atmosphere in this grand hallway is suffocating. As the staff prepares for a high-level meeting regarding an upcoming state banquet, two of the most powerful women in the United Kingdom find themselves in a direct, icy confrontation. Princess Anne, leaning against the mahogany paneling, does not raise her voice. She doesn't have to. She simply waits for Queen Camilla to approach, and then, with the practiced precision of a military commander, she blocks the path. There are no shouts, no dramatic gestures, only the chilling weight of a cold, hard number. Anne presents a document, but her eyes never leave the Queen's. She delivers a brutal ultimatum. 72 hours. That is the window of time she is giving the King and Queen to strike the 15% funding clause from the Duchy of Lancaster's restructuring plan. In exactly 72 hours, the quarterly budget report is scheduled to be handed over to the Parliamentary Public Accounts Committee. Once those papers cross that threshold, the secret 15% and the £450,000 security package for Tom Parker Bowles will become a matter of public record. It will be out of the King's hands, and in the hands of a committee known for its ruthless scrutiny of royal spending. The tension between the two women is palpable, a masterclass in passive-aggressive power dynamics. Queen Camilla, usually the picture of composed diplomacy, finds herself forced into a corner. She doesn't retreat. Instead, she leans into her role as a mother, her voice reportedly trembling with a mix of exhaustion and maternal instinct. Through the narrative of those who observed the exchange from a distance, the Queen's defense was clear. She argued that her son, Tom, deserved some form of compensation. She spoke of the decades he spent as a target of the British tabloids, a man whose private life was stripped bare simply because of his mother's relationship with the King. To Camilla, this £6,800,000 fund was a small price to pay for 20 years of collateral damage. But Princess Anne's response was a razor-sharp reminder of the Crown's ultimate priority. She didn't speak as a sister-in-law. She spoke as the Princess Royal, the guardian of the institution's integrity. She looked directly at Camilla and made it clear that in this family, no one, absolutely no one, has the right to use public funds to make amends for personal mistakes or private grievances. She argued that the monarchy is built on the principle of service, not self-interest, and that diverting millions to a non-royal relative was a fundamental violation of the oath they all live by. This wasn't just a disagreement over a budget line. It was the moment the mask of family unity finally slipped. For years, the public has seen Anne and Camilla standing side by side at balconies and garden parties, the image of a supportive modern monarchy. But in the shadows of the East Corridor, that image shattered. The rift between the King's sister and the King's wife is now an open wound within the palace. As the 72-hour clock begins to tick toward the parliamentary deadline, the stakes have moved beyond mere finance. This is a battle for the very soul of the King's reign. If the 15% remains, the public backlash could be the greatest crisis Charles has faced since taking the throne. If it is removed, the tension within his own marriage may become unbearable. The corridor is empty now, but the echo of that 72-hour warning remains, leaving the monarchy on the brink of a transparency scandal that no amount of royal tradition can hide. The question isn't just about who wins the argument, but whether the Crown can survive the fallout when the secret of the 15% finally goes public. 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning. The King's private study in Buckingham Palace, a room usually reserved for the quiet contemplation of state papers, has become a courtroom for a family in crisis. King Charles sits behind his heavy oak desk, the morning light catching the deep lines of exhaustion on his face. The 72-hour ultimatum delivered in the East Corridor is nearing its end, and the Princess Royal has arrived to deliver the final blow. Princess Anne does not come with emotional pleas. She comes with a legal trap, so precise it leaves the King with nowhere to hide. She lays a single page on the desk, pointing to a specific clause that has been buried in royal protocol for decades. This is the moment Anne reveals the 2.5% threshold. According to Section 4 of the Royal Finance Act, any movement of royal assets or surplus revenue exceeding 2.5% of the total fund, when intended for individuals who do not possess direct lineal blood connection to the sovereign, is strictly prohibited without the express approval of Parliament. The math is as cold as it is devastating. The 15% diversion the king signed amounting to £6,800,000 dwarfs the legal limit by attempting to fund Tom Parker Bowles's office and security through this culinary heritage fund. The king has inadvertently stepped into a constitutional minefield. Princess Anne's voice, as recounted by those close to the morning's meeting, was sharp and unwavering. She reportedly told her brother that this wasn't just a lapse in judgment, it was an illegal act. She warned him that if he did not rescind the signature, he would be the first monarch in modern history to face a financial investigation by the House of Commons over the misuse of duchy funds for non-royal relatives. As the legal reality sinks in, the drama shifts from the constitutional to the deeply personal. For King Charles, the realization is a crushing blow to his pride and his heart. He sits in stunned silence, the memory of that quiet breakfast at Clarence House flashing before his eyes. He recalls the gentle way Camilla poured his tea, the soft tone she used to speak of her son's struggles, and the way she placed the folder before him when he was at his most vulnerable. He realizes now that he wasn't just being a supportive husband, he was being managed. He feels the sting of a profound betrayal, realizing that his wife, the woman he spent a lifetime fighting to bring into the royal fold, may have exploited his fatigue and his unwavering trust to secure a multi-million-pound safety net for her own children. The group interest of the Parker Bowles family had been slipped into the royal budget under the guise of national heritage, and he had been the one to authorize it. The king is now a man caught between the two most powerful women in his life. On one side stands his sister, the embodiment of duty and the law, threatening a public scandal that could destroy his reign before it truly begins. On the other stands his wife, whose motives he is now forced to question for the first time in their decades-long union. The silence in the king's office is heavy with the weight of this impossible choice. If he cancels the funding, he faces a crisis at home with a wife who feels her family has been sidelined. If he allows it to stand, he faces a constitutional crisis that could end the monarchy's financial independence forever. The 2.5% threshold has become a wall he cannot climb. As the clock ticks toward the deadline, the king is left to wonder if the crown he wears is heavy because of the state or because of the secrets held by those closest to him. The legal trap has snapped shut, and the fallout promises to be more expensive than any budget could ever predict. 11:15 p.m. The sprawling country estate of Highgrove House is usually a sanctuary of birdsong and quiet gardens, but tonight, the atmosphere inside the king's private study is suffocating. The air is thick with the residue of a 4-hour storm, a verbal battle that has pushed the royal marriage to its absolute breaking point. The marathon argument between King Charles and Queen Camilla has finally come to an end, and the silence that follows is more devastating than the shouting. On the desk lies the document that started it all, now marked with a single, definitive word: cancelled. The financial reality for Tom Parker Bowles has shifted from £6,800,000 to exactly zero. The weight of this £0 decision hangs over the room like a shroud. During those 4 grueling hours, the dialogue between the monarch and his wife stripped away the layers of their long-held partnership. According to those close to the domestic staff who witnessed the tension, the Queen's voice was filled with a desperate, maternal fury. She reportedly accused the king of abandoning the one family that had stood by him during his darkest years, telling him that by withdrawing the protection for her son, he was proving that his loyalty to an ancient, rigid protocol was greater than his love for her. She made it clear that she viewed this not as a legal necessity, but as a personal betrayal of the highest order. The king, exhausted and emotionally drained, had to find the strength to stand his ground. He reportedly told Camilla that he could not and would not risk the future of the British monarchy for a private inheritance. He explained that the 2.5% threshold was a line he could not cross without inviting the destruction of the crown's credibility. In a moment of heartbreaking clarity, he told her that while he loved her, He could not be the king who broke the law to settle a family debt. He had to choose between being a protector of his wife's children or being the protector of the British Constitution. He chose the crown. The aftermath of the decision was immediate and chilling. Without a word, Queen Camilla began to gather her things. In a gesture that spoke volumes to the few staff members still on duty, she did not retire to their shared suite. Instead, she moved her belongings to a separate bedroom on the other side of the house. The sound of her door closing was the final punctuation mark on the night. The woman, who had been his rock, his confidant, and his greatest ally for over 50 years, had retreated into a cold, impenetrable silence. Left alone in the dim yellow glow of his desk lamp, King Charles found himself staring at a photograph of his late mother, Queen Elizabeth II. In her eyes, he seemed to find a reflection of his own isolation. He realized the cruel, ultimate paradox of his position. To be a good king, to be the steady, fiscally responsible sovereign the nation demanded, he was forced to be a bad husband. He had saved the royal treasury from a £6 million scandal, but the cost to his private life was incalculable. The midnight withdrawal was not just about the money, it was about the sacrifice of personal happiness on the altar of royal duty. As he sat in the stillness of Highgrove, the king understood that the crown he had waited a lifetime to wear came with a price he was only just beginning to pay. He had protected the throne from the 2.5% trap, but in doing so, he had fractured the most important relationship of his life. The shadow of the late queen loomed large in the room, a silent reminder that the path of the monarch is always a lonely one. As the clock ticked past midnight, the king was left with his duty, his laws, and a £0 balance for his family, but an empty seat beside him. 9 o'clock in the morning, exactly 1 week after the midnight storm at Highgrove. The air at the Royal Burial Ground in Windsor is crisp and still, carrying the scent of damp earth and ancient stone. Here, surrounded by the silent weight of centuries of monarchs, the chaos of the last 7 days feels both distant and profoundly heavy. The morning newspapers have just been delivered to the palace gates, and for the first time in months, the headlines are not filled with rumors of scandal or financial misconduct. The official annual financial transparency report has been published to the public, and the result is a masterpiece of fiscal discipline. The numbers in the report are absolute. 100% of the surplus revenue from the Duchy of Lancaster has been allocated to traditional, long-standing charitable causes supporting rural communities, historical preservation, and veteran healthcare. There is no mention of a culinary heritage fund, and not a single penny of the £6,800,000 originally earmarked for Tom Parker bowls has left the royal accounts. The ledger is clean, the audit is pristine, and the constitutional crisis that threatened to engulf the king's reign has been averted with surgical precision. On paper, it is a total victory for the House of Windsor, but as King Charles walks slowly along the gravel paths of the cemetery, he does not look like a man who has won. Beside him is Princess Anne, the woman whose ruthless adherence to the rules saved his crown but fractured his home. They walk in a silence that is no longer the comfortable quiet of siblings, but the heavy stillness of two people who have seen the cost of their duty. The king's movements are slow, his shoulders slightly hunched against the morning chill, looking less like a sovereign and more like a man carrying a burden he never truly wanted. According to those who observed the pair from a respectful distance, the king eventually stopped in front of the resting place of his parents. In a voice described as thin and weary, he turned to his sister and asked a question that had clearly been haunting him since the night at Highgrove. He asked her, if it were their mother standing here today, did she think the Queen would forgive him for what he had done? He was asking about the choice to prioritize the institution over the woman he loves, the choice to leave his wife's son without the protection they had promised. Princess Anne did not offer a direct answer. She did not speak of forgiveness or of family bonds. Instead, in a gesture that was uncharacteristically tender for the stoic Princess Royal, she reached out and gently adjusted the collar of her brother's coat, smoothing the fabric with a steady hand. It was a silent acknowledgement of his role, Her message was clear without a single word. A monarch does not ask for forgiveness. A monarch simply does what is necessary to ensure the survival of the crown. She was reminding him that they are the servants of the office, and the office requires everything they have to give. As they turned to walk back toward the palace, the story of the 15% and the secret security deal was officially over. The financial gates had been locked, the percentage points had been balanced, and the royal brand remained untarnished in the eyes of the taxpayer. But the warmth that once defined the king's inner circle had evaporated. Behind the gilded doors of his residences, the king returns to a life of quiet rooms and separate lives. The crown has been protected, and the lineage is secure, but the cost of that safety has been the final, lingering embers of family harmony. In the pursuit of a perfect ledger, the king has found that some losses can never be recovered. Has the king made the right choice by putting the crown's survival above his own family's peace? Or was the price of this financial victory simply too high to pay? Share your thoughts on this royal dilemma in the comments below. For more exclusive insights and deep dives into the lives of the House of Windsor, make sure to stay connected with us here at the Royal Insider Network. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're always the first to know the truth.